Chapter 65 Judo Gang. Chapter 65 Judo Gang. At this time, several elders and Mengbo, their complexions were somewhat haggard, all of them were sweating profusely. From their appearance, one could clearly see that they had consumed a lot of their true qi. Many thanks seniors for helping my dad in expelling the poison. How is he now? Asked Chen Xiang. Although his voice was calm, he was extremely worried in his mind. Chen Tianhu was Chen Xiang's father and his only family. Since his childhood, his father had taken care of him, which made him afraid at the thought of losing his father. Meng Bo said, "Rest assured, the poison has been temporarily suppressed, but it has not been completely expelled. The poison has completely seeped into the bones and meridians, even entered into his 5 zhang and 6 fu. Fortunately, we were able to suppress the poison, or else." Chen Xiang closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He then clenched both his fists. In his heart, he was completely furious. An invisible yet heavy slaughter qi suddenly surged out from his body. Chen Tianhu slightly opened his eyes. Although his voice was very frail, it was full of anger. "Judo Gang. Those bastards. They plotted against our Chen family members multiple times, so I personally went to settle all accounts. In the end, a fight broke out. After I managed to kill 2 managers of Judo Gang and 5 of their elders, their chief plotted against me. I decided to not continue fighting and rushed back." Chen Xiang was shocked. Even those elders and Meng Bo glanced at Chen Tianhu with an unbelievable look. "Dad, you really rushed alone into Judo Gang?" Chen Xiang sucked a cold, long, deep breath. The Judo Gang was a very vicious organization, specializing in poison. Many martial artists feared this dark organization. 10 years ago, 2 families sent their top experts to deal with them, but not a single one returned. Later, the 2 family patriarchs also went, but they too also didn't return. Humph, what is there to fear? Ever since our Chen family annexed the Yao family, the Judo Gang has been opposing our Chen family. Always SN. ATC. Hing our goods. Even 10 of our Chen family members were secretly poisoned. If Judo Gang is not eliminated, they'll only kill more of our Chen family members." Chen Tianhu angrily said. "Calm down." Meng Bo appealed. What Chen Tianhu did could actually be considered earth-shattering. Killing 2 managers and 5 elders of Judo Gang was definitely a great loss for them. He had shaken the whole foundation of the gang by himself. Chen Luzhong arrived, and he gave everyone the needle wrapped in a thick cloth he held in his hand for everyone to look at, and said, "This needle was removed from Tianhu's arm, was responsible for poison we just suppressed a moment ago. Anybody PRIC ked by this needle will experience a paralysis, which is rather hard to detect. However, as Chen Tianhu's divine sense is quite powerful, he was able to sense his body condition and didn't continue the battle. Otherwise, the poison diffusion would have intensified." Seeing the needle, Chen Xiang's eyes fiercely opened, his complexion turned more solemn. "I've seen this needle before." Chen Xiang clenched his fist. He remembered when he fought against Crown Prince Song Nanming. He had also used a similar needle. Moreover, Ling Yulan was also stabbed by it, but the poison on it was not this strong. Yes, the Crown Prince, during the battle with Ling Yulan, released ice needles and poisoned Ling Yulan. During the match with me, he released similar needles, but it was burned down by my fire. Chen Xiang's eyebrows twitched as he spoke. He was constantly pondering about how the Crown Prince obtained this sort of thing, but now that the Judo Gang was revealed to also have the same thing, everyone could not help but think there was definitely some association between the two. The Emperor, Song Wu, is leisurely and carefree. Joining hands with Judo Gang doesn't have even the tiniest bit of advantage for him, but it is quite possible that the Crown Prince is secretly in contact with Judo Gang. Said Meng Bo, "Not so long ago it was him who drove out the poison from Ling Yulan, so he was also suspicious. I must clearly check." Dad, where is the Judu Gang's base? Chen Xiang asked. His eyes were filled with a thick killing intent. Freewind Mountain, be careful. Chen Tianhu was very clear on his son's, Chen Xiang's, strength also REA's. Assured him, as even the powerful Yao family was defeated by him. Rest as. Assured, we only need some more time to completely expel Tianhu's poison. Chen Luzhong patted Chen Xiang's shoulder. Chen Xiang left the private room, and rode out of the city toward eastern part of King City. Freewind Mountain had always been the gathering place for bandits, and rumor had it that various scattered groups of bandits and robbers had gathered and formed one gang, which was now known as the Judu Gang. After leaving the city, Chen Xiang found out that someone was following him. He pretended that he hadn't noticed and continued on his way. After eliminating the Yao family, it was quite possible that some of their remnants were looking for revenge. However, with his current strength, Chen Xiang didn't need to worry about revenge from these sorts of people. Entering the forest, Chen Xiang got off the horse and bolted into the forest. He also intentionally slowed down a bit, so that those following him might be able to catch up. However, what made him think something strange was going on was the fact that the person following him didn't take any actions and seemed to only be responsible for monitoring him. Could it be someone from Freewind Mountain guessed that I'll arrive? Suddenly, this thought sprung up in Chen Xiang's mind. He speculated there might be an ambush ahead. After entering deep into the forest, he suddenly found out that the one who was following him went around him and was now in front. This made Chen Xiang even more certain about an ambush ahead. Sure enough, after running for a bit into the forest, he saw a man sitting in front of him. Not a single tree was planted nearby, and the spacious ground was littered with fallen leaves. However, there was a luxurious chair was placed, on which sat a handsome fellow. Song Nanming. Chen Xiang coldly looked at the crown prince, who was once crippled by Chen Xiang. If not for a large number of good spirit herbs, the crown prince wouldn't have been able to recover so fast. Song Nanming appearing here only had one explanation, and that was Song Nanming and Judu Gang did indeed have a close relations. Hi+P. Just after Chen Tianhu left Judu Gang, they had immediately sent a messaging eagle, so Song Nanming had time to come here. According to Chen Xiang's demeanor, after the poisoned Chen Tianhu fled, Chen Xiang would surely come for revenge. Because Song Nanming hated Chen Xiang, intercepting him halfway was also normal. Once Chen Xiang thought about this, he knew he had been surrounded by many Judu Gang members who were prepared to use many hidden weapons laced with poison. However, he was still calm. As an alchemist, he already had the ability to negate poison. Furthermore, he was in the 8th level of mortal martial realm, so he had strong insight. Lastly, Song Nanming would not use the very same needle to plot against him. Behind Song Nanming stood 4 robust men, their whole bodies exuding pure true qi. From this, one could determine they were the Imperial Palace expert. Song Nanming, I didn't expect you to team up with the Judu Gang. For the dignified Southern Martial Empire Crown Prince to actually have relations with this wicked force. If this is spread out, Chen Xiang sneered. Chen Xiang, your death is imminent, yet why are you so spirited? You'll die, and then who will know about me and Judu Gang? Ha 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 ha, as long as I deal with you, when I become emperor, I will definitely destroy your Chen family. This is because I want to become the one true emperor. Song Nanming said with a maddening look. The Southern Martial Empire's emperor was an emperor in name only, although he managed the whole country. When the Chen and Yao family matter occurred, he had no right to interfere, nor had he the strength to do so. Therefore his authority was actually very limited. Song Nanming was the crown prince, the next emperor. With his extreme desire for power, he didn't want to suppressed by those martial arts families, so he had formed relations with Judu Gang-like forces. When the time was right, he planned to use these forces to secretly annihilate these families. Attack, we cannot allow him to make it alive out of here. With Song Nanming yelling, a cold wind suddenly blew in the forest. Chapter 66, Exterminating Dragon Divine Martial Skill. Chapter 66, Exterminating Dragon Divine Martial Skill. Song Nanming, who was being escorted by the 4 Imperial Palace experts behind him, vanished in the blink of an eye inside the forest. A chilly wind came, and Chen Xiang saw large amounts of black mist suddenly appear around him. He immediately guarded his body with vibrant true qi, transforming it into a qi cover enveloping his body. He held his breath at the same time, because he knew that this was definitely a poisonous mist. The poisonous mist had just arrived, enshrouding the place where Chen Xiang stood, covering him completely. Even under the broad daylight, it was pitch black around him. Suddenly, Chen Xiang's eyebrows twitched as he sensed numerous things quickly flying towards him from all 4 directions. Those were countless arrows as well as needles of varying length and thickness. A variety of hidden weapons simultaneously flew over from all 4 directions. The previously dusky forest was now tightly covered and became even darker. This was similar to a rainstorm of poisonous hidden weapons that were currently flying towards Chen Xiang. Previously, Chen Xiang had perceived many people around him, but he hadn't expected them to simultaneously release this many hidden weapons in such a spectacular way. However, despite this being the case, Chen Xiang was still not the least bit afraid. No wonder Song Nanming is so certain of my death. If I was an ordinary 8th level or 9th level mortal martial realm expert, I'm afraid I would surely suffer, Chen Xiang said in his heart. As the countless flying needles and arrows stabbed him, a large amount of invisible true qi immediately burst out from his body. This was the universal force created from the fusion of the 5 elements. This deep and terrifying power pervaded through a radius of several zhang. Those flying hidden weapons were now caught by this power. None of them were able to move an inch forward, entirely suspended in the air. Countless flying needles and arrows were stopped by the universal force released by Chen Xiang. They were suspended in the air and piled up on top of each other. It was as if a black wall was erected all around Chen Xiang. Hey, no more huh? But this could still be counted as enough. Chen Xiang laughed. He used Tai Chi Divine Exercise, with both hard and soft characteristics, and released the universal force that held all of the hidden weapons suspended in place within the air. At this time, Chen Xiang sensed that all the hidden people around him started to run away into the forest. A ruthless idea came to Chen Xiang. Boom! The universal true qi surged out like tsunami from his body. Due to the sudden force, those hidden weapons, which were previously suspended in air, got blasted away along with the poisonous mist and flew out in all 4 directions. In the blink of an eye, Chen Xiang's location was now restored to the previous luminous forest. However, now there were waves after waves of pitiful screams emitted from the forest as if a devil was demanding for hundreds of lives. Truly reaping what you sowed. Chen Xiang shook his head and sighed. He had extremely vibrant and powerful true qi. As long as he could use its power properly, nothing was impossible for him. He simply didn't need to pay any attention to hidden weapons. 2 groups of flames appeared on Chen Xiang's back. These intense flames soon transformed into a pair of giant wings. In order to prevent Song Nanming from escaping, Chen Xiang had used the vermilion bird fire wings. These fire wings instantly pushed Chen Xiang upwards, like an eagle soaring in the sky. Chen Xiang's vision was like an eagle. Even while flying high in the air, he could still clearly see everything on the ground. He soon was able to reach the road outside the forest where he previously left his horse, which was also the path back to the King City. Chen Xiang, with his divine sense, flapped and controlled the vermilion bird fire wings, and flew extremely quickly. It didn't take long for him to catch up with Song Nanming. Galloping on the horseback and speeding away, Song Nanming looked very excited because he finally was able to remove his greatest enemy. As long as his father, the Emperor Pa S. said his throne to Song Nanming, he could carry out his plan. But at this time, he suddenly heard someone calling out his name. Song Nanming! Chen Xiang shouted while up in air. Song Nanming thought he heard it wrong, but he once again heard a clear sound coming from high above. He, along with the 4 Imperial Palace experts, raised their heads and looked up. They immediately saw a pair of fiery red wings appear up in the sky. Those pair of wings were extending from a person's body, and that person was Chen Xiang. Watching the wings formed from true qi behind Chen Xiang, Hi plus verse suddenly ran down along Song Nanming's entire body, from the top of his head to the sole of his feet. Chen Xiang was still alive. Moreover, he was using a priceless true qi wing martial skill. Chen Xiang dived down from the sky. A large amount of terrifying azure true qi suddenly appeared on his palm. Soon, a giant palm from true qi was formed. Although Song Nanming and others were running, they were nothing more than rabbits struggling in a falcon's grip. Chen Xiang released the giant palm and fiercely struck down, pressing down on Song Nanming and all of the Imperial Palace experts. This was the true qi from someone in the 8th level mortal martial realm, and it also contained azure lightning and aura wind. Under its terrifying power and momentum, Song Nanming and the others were seriously injured in blink of an eye. Man and horse were both pressed against the ground. The horses were instantly killed, while their riders were vomiting blood, struggling on the ground. Chen Xiang arrived next to them while holding a long blade. Right in front of Song Nanming, Chen Xiang began beheading those Imperial Palace experts one by one. Watching this horrific scene unfold in front of him, Song Nanming trembled from fear and even wet his pants. Chen Xiang could kill Song Nanming unscrupulously, and he knew it. Death was right around the corner, and the air was filled with the strong stench of blood. 4 heads were placed in front of Song Nanming, but in spite of the gory sight in front of him, what made him more frightened was that smile on Chen Xiang's face combined with the thick slaughter qi emanating from his body. I didn't even intend to pursue the matter from the previous martial art tournament, but I also did not think you would plot to kill me. This is what you asked for. Chen Xiang coldly said. Song Nanming's handsome face was twisted. He was seriously injured and didn't have an ounce of strength to resist, but he still said with difficulty, Young Master Chen, before he even finished his sentence, Chen Xiang's blade fell, separating Song Nanming's head from his body. The Crown Prince had just been beheaded by Chen Xiang. Presumptuous guy, always making other people waste their energy. Chen Xiang said with disdain. He took Song Nanming's storage pouch and looked inside. In additions to tens of thousands of spirit coins, there was also a brand new book. Chen Xiang quickly took out the book and opened it. When he saw the words, "A Dragon Martial Technique," he was immediately delighted in his heart. He did not think that Song Nanming would actually carry around the Dragon Martial Technique. Chen Xiang quickly put the Dragon Martial Technique inside the invisible ring so that Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu could study it. The ancient Dragon Martial Technique could be considered a type of divine exercise. It was so powerful that even Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were very interested in it. It's just a part of the complete Dragon Martial Technique. Its main portion is to guide the user in how to transform their true qi transforming into dragon's aura. Afterwards, with this dragon aura the user can cast out martial skills. It was exactly the same as the dragon aura fist that you used before, that so-called dragon aura fist you previously stole from and used against Song Nanming was actually still not quite perfect. Furthermore, it could also be said that Song Nanming had not practiced enough and was not proficient in this skill. Su Meiyao said excitedly. There's such a good martial skill and yet he didn't practice enough. This crown price is simply a waste. Those ice-cold eyes of Bai Yuyu was calmly staring at that book. Although it was handwritten, it was very detailed. Chen Xiang was already missing some suitable martial techniques, as there weren't many inside the divine exercise of 4 symbols. Furthermore, the few in there often required extremely vibrant true qi to properly display their effect. Although the Chun family may have a few decent martial techniques, Chun Xiang was not satisfied with them. Besides, the majority were not suited for his cultivation. Sister Meiyao, is there any difference between the dragon martial technique and the azure dragon divine exercise? Chen Xiang asked. They are completely different. The dragon martial technique was personally created by a dragon. Meanwhile, the azure dragon divine exercise was created by a human in accordance with a dragon. According to ancient legends, it has been mentioned that the dragon martial technique created by a dragon can fully display a dragon's formidable power, even to the point where it is capable of killing other dragons. As such, it is also known as the exterminating dragon divine martial skill. Su Meiyao said. Exterminating dragon divine martial skill. Just from the name itself, Chen Xiang knew it was very formidable. So, the fragments of the dragon martial technique should be scattered throughout the world, but if all of them were to be collected, that would mean that, as Chen Xiang thought about this, he suddenly became very excited. However, he knew in his heart this would be very difficult to achieve. Chapter 67, Martial Spirit. Chapter 67, Martial Spirit. A ballistic bunny, the no-one fan Chen Xiang set fire to Song Nanming and the others to incinerate their bodies. But what made him surprised was that although the fire reduced them to ash, 2 qi long golden bands of light remained. TLN. 1 qi equals 1/3 m. What is that? Chen Xiang said, with uncertainty, and then consulted Bao Yuyu and Su Meiyao. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu, who were both wearing a black hood, came out of the storage ring. They wore these outfits so no one would be able to see their appearances. It is a martial spirit? In Bai Yuyu's ice-cold voice, a sliver of surprise could be heard. Su Meiyao leaned down and stroked it with her head, saying with certainty, "Yes, they are martial spirits." What is a martial spirit? Chen Xiang had never heard of such a thing. This thing has a unique property, what it is specifically is unclear. Anyway, it is bred out from true qi, produced by heaven and earth. If it is an ice martial spirit and fuses with your arm, even fire-attributed true qi, after pass sing through the ice martial spirit, will become ice-cold true qi, said Su Meiyao. Chen Xiang was surprised. So you're saying if someone who cannot release fire true qi integrates a fire marital spirit into their arm, then they could very well be able to release fire true qi? Bai Yuyu said yes. So any martial spirit is very valuable, and it is also why we cannot tell what attribute this martial spirit has. Chen Xiang just heard about this mystical resource for the first time, which shows just how rare it was. But then why would Song Nanming have it? Having a martial spirit might not make much sense to you because you are able to freely release the 5 elements of true qi, but you should keep it to sell later. You should be able to exchange it for a lot of good resources. Su Meiyao got out a small jade bottle and, using the Tai Chi divine exercise, sucked in the martial spirit. Chen Xiang flew up towards Freewind Mountain. Killing Song Nanming not only gave him the exterminating dragon divine exercise, but also the martial spirits. This harvest can be considered to be very big. Using his divine sense, Chen Xiang asked Su Meiyao, who was inside the ring, "Sister Meiyao, can you talk about these martial spirit things with me? Is it really irrelevant and useless for me?" Su Meiyao said, "Of course not, there are many different types of martial spirits. In addition to the primary elemental martial spirits, there are also beast martial spirits that have been congealed out by demon beasts, which is equally rare. The kind which is most useful to you would be a fire martial spirit. It is able to change the very nature of the flames, allowing them to have a wide variety of properties, which is very helpful to alchemists. Fire spirits are very rare. I only know that my teacher has one and has never seen anyone else have it, but only heard rumors that several strong individuals have one." Chen Xiang is secretly shocked. He heard from Su Meiyao's mouth that people who have this fire martial spirit are one of those extremely strong experts. Freewind Mountain, although not very high, is still a very big stone mountain. At the highest point, many houses are constructed, and above the hilltop there was a majestic palace hall. Chen Xiang did not expect that in such a place there will actually be a gathering of the black forces at such a large scale. Chen Xiang admired his father, who with only the 8th level of the mortal martial realm, actually dared to solo rush into the large dark forces and also killed a lot of their important members. At the foot of the mountain, due to the previous rush by Chen Tianhu, many people are patrolling. This Freewind Mountain is way more heavily guarded, but that doesn't matter to Chen Xiang. His father had previously beheaded many high-level members, so he was much more relaxed. Chen Xiang already knew that the Judo gang is very formidable and that they used all kinds of hidden weapons laced with poison. As long as he took the proper precautions against them, he simply had nothing to fear from this Judo gang. Before, Chen Xiang was attacked from all sides by thousands of hidden weapons, yet all of them didn't even matter to him. Those hidden weapons are not even slightly effective against him. One Judo gang member saw Chen Xiang coming out from inside the mountain forest. He immediately unsheathed the sword on his waist, shouting, "Who is it?" Chen Xiang. When the Judo gang members saw this handsome teenager burst out a mesmerizing slaughter chi while he spoke, they could not help but be alarmed. They had no doubt that this teenage is the rumored Chen Xiang. Edian, no S-H-I plus T Sherlock, he just shouted out his name. Chen Xiang's eyes, containing immense amounts of slaughter chi, swept through the group. Suddenly those Judo gang members waved both of their arms quickly as numerous steel needles of varying sizes flew out from their hands. Under the illumination of the sunlight, they all flashed with an intermittent cold aura. Just as Chen Xiang expected, most of the Judo gang members used hidden weapons. If it was any ordinary martial artist, they would have difficulty guarding against these attacks and would be easily killed by these people. But for Chen Xiang, this simply did not pose that much of a threat. His eyebrows just simply rose while hot aura chi surged out from his body, forming a S-H-I plus ELD that wrapped around his body. These steel needles were stopped in their tracks by the S-H-I plus ELD. Chen Xiang, watching the sharp steel needles, coldly smiled and emitted a powerful divine sense. This in turn controlled those countless steel needles, making them turn around right back onto those Judo gang members. Creating all these steel needles shouldn't be that easy, right? Here, I'll return them all back to you. Chen Xiang sneered as the countless steel needles fell like a rainstorm towards the Judo gang members. The Judo gang members who weren't able to react properly in time easily got pierced by the countless different steel needles, resembling a human hedgehog. Afterwards, Chen Xiang saw a scalp-tingling scene. Not far from him, those 40 to 50 people, after being pierced by their steel needles, suddenly turned black. These people emitted the most miserable screams as their bodies slowly melted, turning into a black pool of blood. This blood is full of poison, as not just their bodies but even their clothes weren't spared as they melted. Slowly the stones beside them and even those steel needles disappeared, showing just how terrible this poison is. This Judo gang cannot be allowed to remain, Chen Xiang said with a frown. He released a large amount of flames incinerating the poison blood, then started flying towards the hilltop. Just a moment ago, when Chen Xiang and the Judo gang members acted, the intermittent rings of bells came from the hilltop. Chen Xiang knew he has been discovered, but he still ran towards the hilltop. Arriving at the top of the hill, surprisingly, there was no one there. When he entered the majestic palace hall, he saw a person covered in a full black robe inside the luxurious large hall. But suddenly behind this figure, appeared a large crowd that surrounded him. Their numbers could only be counted in the thousands. "Is your father dead?" One white-haired, dwarf, ugly old man came out, in a very ugly voice asked. "TLN, what the hell? Everything about him is ugly. LOL nope, alive and well. Chen Xiang calmly replied, which made the ugly dwarf old man's eye fiercely shoot open. Chen Xiang determined this old man should be the Judu Gang chief. Humph, in that case, why did you come here to die? The Judu Gang chief coldly said. When he looked at Chen Xiang, there was an expression in his eyes that seemed to be looking at a dead man. I did not come here to die. I came here to collect your life. Chen Xiang solemnly stated. His face and tone were completely serious. Chapter 68, Jiuduji. Chapter 68, Jiuduji. The No One fan and Inalistic Bunny listening to this, the Judu Gang leader, as if listening to a joke, actually laughed. Following right after him, all the black-robed men around him also started laughing. Their laughter was very ugly and absolutely terrifying. Your father came quietly, which is why it cost us dearly. If we had taken early precautions, then he would have died, but now in your case we have taken these necessary measures. There is no doubt that you will certainly die. Judu Gang leader said with a sinister laughter. You are able to come here, then you should have not encountered Song Nanming. It's your good luck, but you coming here is also the same as death. Of course, I will not let you die so easily. I'll use poison to slowly kill you, and even use you to threaten the Qin family. Chen Xiang interrupted him and said, I met Song Nanming, and this also means that I also experienced your proud Judu Gang, but it seems that they are not very formidable. Chen Xiang's words made the triumphant Judu Gang leader's complexion suddenly sink, and with an unbelievable look on his face said, Brat, I know you're formidable, but the fact that you're still not dead under the siege of hundreds of groups of the Judu Gang would mean that you would have to be in the 10th level of mortal martial realm? I admit, your embroidery needle technique is not bad, pretty dangerous, but in my eyes they are only the acrobatics of a child, said Chen Xiang, who originally was smiling, but suddenly his smile disappeared and his face turned into a face that was full of slaughter chi. I'm not in the 10th level of mortal martial realm, but I'm able to kill a 10th level mortal martial realm expert. Immediately after speaking, in Chen Xiang's one arm suddenly surged out an invisible chi aura, which was congealed out from universal true chi. If their divine sense was not strong enough, then they simply couldn't find this frightening true chi. When the Judu Gang members had just discovered Chen Xiang's action, Chen Xiang's fist already fiercely struck out and rushed forward. Because the speed was too fast, a majestic force struck from the air above, emitting a deafening explosion, and the whole ground broke as it was unable to bear this strong force and the spreading of the chi undulation which shook and smashed everything it passed. This made the entire palace hall to fiercely shake. Chen Xiang's punch, in blink of an eye, burst out and also accurately struck on top of that old man's chest. But what made Chen Xiang surprised is the fact that the Judu Gang leader actually did not fly out, and instead, in that moment, the Judu Gang leader released a chi aura and withstood that fierce power of Chen Xiang's. You, Judu Gang leader, hadn't antic 1p. aided that Chen Xiang would act so suddenly and with this much frightening power. In his own opinion, this power was comparable with several 10th level mortal martial realm experts. He vomited a mouthful of blood, as Chen Xiang's fist had seriously injured him. Attack, kill him. As the voice faded, Chen Xiang's fist suddenly turning golden, and glowing true chi flowed in the veins inside. The place that his feet landed on was smashed. As the extremely powerful true chi madly surged out from his body, Chen Xiang punched out a fist once again. Dragon Aura Fist. This is a dragon slayer divine martial skill, and its power can only be imagined, not to mention the fact that it was formed by using universal true chi. Stop, I'm from the 100 Poison sect. He hadn't even finished speaking, and yet Chen Xiang's fist, which was like a ball of golden aura, thunderously struck on the Judu Gang leader's head, violently flying and hitting him. True chi containing extremely strong destructive power struck on that head, and the head, together with the upper body, was blown into pieces of meat in the blink of an eye. At the same time, countless flying needles flew towards Chen Xiang's body. Chen Xiang did not deal those hidden needles at first, as he knew that all of the hidden weapons were pushed through by pouring true qi in them, and as long as it was only this strong, he could accurately deal with them, either directly using powerful true qi to burst open them, or by controlling them was the only way to deal with these hidden weapons. Chen Xiang had a strong divine sense which he soon released, and those countless flying steel needles coming from all around became perfectly distinguishable for him, because in his eyes those steel needles all became slower. This time, Chen Xiang, unlike before, didn't use any true qi to resist these steel needles, but with his divine sense directly manipulated these poisonous needles, and stopped those needles and suspended them entirely in the air. "Humph, you only have this same attack pattern?" Chen Xiang coldly spoke, and from his body surged out a horrifying scorching qi. He used this scorching qi and billows of flame to start burning everything all around him, and in blink of an eye all those steel needles burned down entirely. Those Jude gang members were all shocked, as they thought their hidden weapons were very powerful. Unexpectedly so was the Chen Xiang. During their preparation in attempts to launch a second wave of hidden weapons, Chen Xiang had suddenly disappeared in the fire sea inside. As they raised their head to look up in the air, there was a huge burning palm, spraying a hot qi undulation, as if a big mountain was pressuring down on them. Boom, boom, boom. The huge burning palm pressed down, producing violent and thunderous explosions, and pressing hundreds of group of gangs in the great hall, and turning them into meat patties, followed by a flame incineration. Chen Xiang once again entirely released his Zhu Ke true qi and transformed it into a huge palm, and inside this large hall the entire Judegang group was killed by the following explosion. In the eyes of a 10th level mortal martial realm expert, ordinary people are like ants. It also isn't an exaggeration that a 10th level mortal martial realm's strength, compared with a 8th level mortal martial realm's strength, is extremely strong. Although Chen Xiang is at the 8th level of the mortal martial realm, his strength displayed was neck and neck with martial artists of the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, and even the 10th level mortal martial realm, the complete state of mortal martial realm. Chen Xiang came out of the hall, arrived outside and again used his terrifying power, capable of SMAs, HI plus ing a mountain, and completely destroyed the Freewind mountain top. Coming down from the Freewind mountain, Chen Xiang immediately operated the Tai Chi divine exercise, and converged his irascible slaughter chi. Otherwise, just after killing a group of people, he looked like a slaughtering human fiend. Chen Xiang just came down from the mountain and entered the forest inside, and found one thin middle-aged man was in front of him. This man, who had a plain appearance, wearing a clean white robe with a beard on some places on his chin, seemed like an ordinary man. But when Chen Xiang saw this middle-aged man, a sense of dread could not be helped but be born in his heart. This middle-aged man had quietly appeared near him. Moreover, Chen Xiang wasn't able to see his strength, and Chen Xiang's intuition also told him that this middle-aged man was one very dangerous figure. I did not expect to even find such a genius in this secular world, even to have a true Qi Wing type martial skill, and have such an amazing inherent potential for alchemy. Even your strength is enough to be shocking. If you can enter the true martial realm, you certainly would be the most promising young man," said the middle-aged man, with a deadpan expression, and his voice also didn't even have an ounce of feelings. "Who are you?" asked Chen Xiang, looking defensive. That middle-aged man revealed a very stiff smile and said, "My name is Zhu Duzi, the founder of the Judegang you just destroyed, yet you say who I am?" Chen Xiang was surprised in his mind. He knew this Zhu Duzi was here for a very long time but still didn't act, and even watched the Judegang's destruction which he himself had established. One can clearly understand the goal of this Zhu Duzi from this attitude. He was only waiting for Chen Xiang to consume his true qi so that he can easily deal with Chen Xiang. As he would rather destroy his own clan, this showed how important he regarded Chen Xiang. 10th level mortal martial realm, Chen Xiang solemnly said. Good eyesight. Geoduzi coldly smiled, looking at the burning palace hall on the mountaintop, and said contemptuously, "For me in this world, I simply do not care about anything related to the Judo gang, as I only set it for recreational purposes. You have consumed a lot of true chi. Rest a.s. Assured, I will not kill you. I'll take you back to 100 Poison Sect and present you as a gift to the sect elder, and they'll like you very much. But prior to this you must hand some things to me, or I'll let you experience what is called a living death." After speaking, Geoduzi's face turned completely ruthless. Chapter 69, Surprise. Chapter 69. Surprise. The other party was at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, which would be Chen Xiang's first time facing an expert of this level. Moreover, the expert was a disciple of a martial arts sect. Yet there was not an ounce of fear in his heart. On the contrary, he was rather excited because he hadn't met a decent opponent for quite a while now. "What do you want me to do, surrender?" Chen Xiang asked, and, though he looked serious, he still gave off a very calm feeling, which made even Geoduzi slightly surprised. "The 1,000-vein fruit, the 1,000-year beast Dan, the H.E.L. Spirit G.R.A.S. You're cultivating martial skill, as well as all of your pills. Give them all to me." Geoduzi's eyes were filled with greed, because these things, even inside a martial arts sect, were very precious, and he believed that he wouldn't be able to get them anytime soon. "Come and collect it yourself." Chen Xiang pursed his lips, as a sliver of a smile could be found on his face, and his previously grim face was suddenly full of soaring war intention, as slaughter chi valiantly soared from his robust body. Seeing the change in Chen Xiang's appearance, Geoduzi was startled, because, mere moments ago, Chen Xiang had looked like someone whose true chi was almost depleted. "Humph, callow brat! A youngling like you dares to try and run rampant in front of me." Geoduzi waved his hand, and a blackish poisonous powder immediately surged out from his sleeve. It transformed into a fierce wind and blew towards Chen Xiang. At such a close range, Chen Xiang was simply unable to react in time, and he was, in the blink of an eye, drowned by the billowing black poisonous wind. Brat, the 100 Poison Sect is one of the 5 devil sects and specializes in poisons. They don't have any powerful martial skills. Even though he is in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, he cannot even utilize half of the usual strength of a 10th level mortal martial realm prac. 1 Tionir. As long as you can deal with the poison they use on you, it is easy to deal with them. In Chen Xiang's mind, Bai Yuyu's voice appeared. Previously, Chen Xiang had learnt several methods of resisting poison from the two beauties beforehand. At this point, the vibrant wood attribute true chi wrapped Chen Xiang's entire body like a cock. However, the poisonous powder was still able to seep in. If his true chi was not vibrant enough and wasn't resisting the poisonous air internally and externally, he would have been poisoned. This shows how fearsome the 100 Poison Sect are when using their poisons. Chen Xiang's body suddenly shook as the poisonous mist shrouding his body was dispersed. It was even blown away towards Geoduzi, while at the same time Chen Xiang took one step and arrived in front of Geoduzi. He opened his mouth and roared, casting Azure Dragon Roar, which started spewing lightning chi aura and accompanied the poisonous mist to attack Geoduzi. After he finished casting Azure Dragon Roar, Chen Xiang then cast Dragon Aura Fist. His true chi transformed into a dragon aura. Using this dragon aura, he punched out a heavenly tiger storm-killing fist. After this frightening dragon chi aura was released, it generated fearsome chi aura explosions, one after another. Geoduzi simply didn't expect Chen Xiang to resist his poison and even more, to counter-attack him at lightning speed, furthermore with such a fearsome true chi. In the blink of an eye, together with his own poisonous mist, dozen or so blows from Chen Xiang had struck his body. Each fist that was struck on Geoduzi's body produced a fearsome chi explosion, which made even the ground tremble. Leaves started to fall from the nearby trees due to the aftershock, while Geoduzi vomited a mouthful of blood. At any rate, Geoduzi was also a 10th level mortal martial realm martial prac. 1 Tionir. Though he often used poison, his true chi was still very vibrant, so he still had a certain level control over his true chi. He was capable of quickly resisting Qin Xiang's violent and fearsome punches with his vibrant true chi. Well, brat, I underestimated you. But do not look down on me quite yet. While Geoduzi spoke, he released dozens of pitch-black snickersnees, which pierced through the air and flew towards Qin Xiang. TLN, Snickersnay, a large sword-like knife. Qin Xiang quickly moved his true chi and released an aura wall in front of him, blocking the pitch-black snickersnees. But a snickersnay is unlike the previous poisonous needles and weren't so easy to deal with. Surprisingly, these snickersnees, that contained poison, slowly penetrated his aura wall. Not far away, Geoduzi was controlling these snickersnees with his divine sense. Brat, you're still too tender. Explode. Geoduzi sneered, and at that exact moment the snickersnees exploded. A powerful chi aura burst out from them, while these snickersnees turned out to be somewhat special. Unexpectedly, compressed chi aura could be poured into them, so when they exploded, Qin Xiang's aura wall was taken along with them. Moreover, a black poisonous mist burst out. This Geoduzi had endless means, and it was virtually impossible to guard against all of them. If it was any other 10th level mortal martial realm expert, they certainly would have been killed. The people we both have previously encountered are very different. The people you met, though you can easily defeat them, there's still nothing in my eyes. Geoduzi gradually walked towards Qin Xiang. The power generated by the explosion of those snickersnees caused Qin Xiang to fly before he was smashed into the ground. Geoduzi thought Qin Xiang had been seriously injured and also poisoned. He didn't expect at all that Qin Xiang would suddenly bounce back from the ground and rush towards him like a bolt of lightning. Qin Xiang's right hand transformed into a dragon claw. This incredibly sharp claw was congealed out by using his Azure Dragon Aura Chi, which was capable of destroying even the strongest of defenses. Like a lightning bolt, Qin Xiang suddenly swooped towards him. Geoduzi was simply defenseless. All he could do in time was to mobilize his true chi to reduce the damage as much as possible. Yet, he still underestimated Qin Xiang's Azure Dragon Claw, which, to his surprise, directly stabbed into his abdomen. Engulfing Devil Skill. Qin Xiang cried in his heart, operating the frightening Devil Skill Pus. Said down by Yuyu, engulfing the 10th level mortal martial realm Geoduzi's true chi. Geoduzi was greatly shocked in his heart, as he could feel how his vibrant true chi was rapidly pouring out of his wounds. He could see on Qin Xiang's handsome face that it was now abruptly covered with hideous blue veins, and he could sense that his true chi was directly pouring into these blue veins. Qin Xiang was engulfing his true chi. Geoduzi panicked. Every devil sect members aspired for this type of devil skill, but these type of devil skills are only owned by devil path sections. However, at this moment, Geoduzi was personally experiencing it. You! Geoduzi roared, as he took another Snickers nay out and madly stabbed it towards Qin Xiang, but Qin Xiang, before he had casted the engulfing devil technique, had released his strongest chi aura defense around his body, because it was harder for him to gather his own true chi while he was engulfing Geoduzi's true chi, thereby reducing his power greatly. Boundless true chi madly surged into Qin Xiang's internal body, violently surging into his meridians. This wildly flowing true chi caused incessant pain in his meridians, but on the other hand Geoduzi's complexion was turning increasingly white, and the strength of his whole body was becoming weaker and weaker. In the blink of an eye more than half of his true chi was gone. Qin Xiang extracted his right hand from Geoduzi's abdomen, while fiercely punching out with his left hand. Tyrannical true chi surged out and bombarded on Geoduzi's body, breaking open his thin and flat body. Duzi wasn't dead yet, as that skinny and hideous face of his was filled with fear, anger and despair, all at the same time. What did you do to me? I don't have my true chi. That is dozens of years of my cultivation. Gone. Go die already. Chen Xiang punched out in the air, and a tyrannical true chi transformed into black chi aura which struck Duzi's body. The upper half of his body almost exploded, as it turned into many bits and pieces. Chen Xiang picked up Duzi's storage pouch and hastily flew away. His body couldn't withstand the new internal tyrannical true chi, which was raging inside his meridians and 5 zhang and 6 fu. His face was ashen. Brat, I already told you that you should not engulf someone whose strength is much stronger than your own. If you aren't able to control this engulfed power, your body will explode, and you will perish. Bai Yu coldly shouted. Her voice was full of anger, but there was a sliver of concern within it. Sister Yu, do not worry, I've a sense of proportion. Chen Xiang operated the Tai Chi divine exercise, refining as much as possible of the engulfed true chi, along with swallowing many pills, which could help him in refining the true chi. Chapter 70. Inheritance Bead. Chapter 70. Inheritance Bead by Yu was very pis set off, but now was not the time to teach him a lesson. Quickly find a place and carefully refine it. Bai Yu instructed, her ice-cold voice sounded somewhat anxious, which made Chen Xiang's heart feel a little warm. He suddenly felt somewhat guilty for not remembering Bai Yu's advice, even though she had insisted on it so many times. Chen Xiang went deep into the mountain forest, and prepared to refine the engulfed tyrannical true chi above a giant tree. This true chi rejected him after entering his body because this true chi wasn't originally his, thus becoming maniacally oppressive, and if it was not suppressed, then it would soon blast him to death. Fortunately, the situation itself wasn't all that bad. Although Duzi was in 10th level mortal martial realm, his true chi was not so pure. Moreover, his true chi didn't possess any kind of attribute. The Tai Chi Yin and Yang diagram within Chen Xiang quickly started spinning, sucking that muddy true chi inside the Tai Chi diagram for refinement. Immediately after that, pure white true chi started to shoot towards the 5 BAL S of different attributed true chi breeding above the Tai Chi diagram. Meiyao sister, what do I do next? I feel that these 5 true chi BALLS aren't able to simulate that much true chi in any way possible. Chen Xiang asked. Compress them and congeal a form. Congeal 5 different shapes from these 5 elements true chi BALLS. Su Meiyao immediately replied. So I'm going to enter the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, the true form realm? Chen Xiang asked. Compressing the true chi and congealing out a form was done to enter the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Not so fast, since you want to condensate the form from all 5 true chi BALLS, and you're also cultivating the divine exercise of 4 symbols. Then you should congeal the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird and the black tortoise, these 4 1 ties. Su Meiyao instructed. Chen Xiang frowned and said, But I don't know the true appearance of these 4 divine beasts, so how am I going to congeal their appearance? Moreover, my main cultivation exercise is the Tai Chi divine exercise. So shouldn't my true form be relevant with my main exercise? The divine exercise of 4 symbols is a branch exercise of the Tai Chi divine exercise. The Tai Chi divine exercise and the divine exercise of 4 symbols have the very same mnemonics for congealing out shapes for entering the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, so if you follow according to my previous mnemonics, naturally, you'll be able to congeal the 4 divine beast forms. Su Meiyao spoke. TLN. Mnemonics. Chanting Sutra. After listening to what Su Meiyao said, he immediately thought about the one seemingly common mnemonics of the divine exercise of 4 symbols, and the Tai Chi divine exercise, which he couldn't completely understand. Su Meiyao once said that this was the most crucial mnemonics. However, she hadn't told him that this mnemonics was responsible for congealing the true form. Chen Xiang immediately started operating the exercise according to the mnemonics, letting the true qi flow into his dantian according to the pre-described method. He first decided to congeal the azure dragon beast form, and he started compressing a large amount of true qi to congeal this form. During this process, a large amount of true qi was compressed together, and because of this, true qi continuously exploded. Due to these small explosions, there was a qualitative change in his true qi, making the true qi much more vibrant and intrepid. An entire day went by, and above the Tai Chi diagram in Chen Xiang's dantian there was true qi, in the form of a snake, dancing. Currently it was only an embryonic form and had not fully taken form yet, so one couldn't see the minutiae of the azure dragon on it yet. Your true form has just taken shape, so it's not the genuine and final form. Only after reaching the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, the complete realm, will the true form within your body be lifelike. You must separately compress all 5 attributed true qi into a form, and then only can you consider yourself to have advanced into the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Su Meiyao continued. Chen Xiang nodded his head and continued to cultivate. The next morning, warm morning light shone onto the branches and the leaves above Chen Xiang's body. Chen Xiang gradually opened his eyes and gently sighed, as currently he was only able to congeal 2 true qi forms. The azure dragon and the vermilion bird forms were extremely fuzzy, but they were molded by compressing a large amount of true qi, so they were much more vibrant than before. Originally the true qi ball was like a small bead in a very big SP. AC, containing a few hundreds of rice grain-sized true qi inside them, but now that very small bead contained tens of thousands of rice grain-sized true qi in them, but this was just the initial state. If one really wanted to congeal a lifelike true qi form, then at that time one needed to compress hundreds of thousands of this rice grain-sized true qi in that tiny little SPAC inside. Only 2 true qi forms. Chen Xiang inspected the interior of his dantian and was slightly disappointed, while watching the snake form and the bird form spreading its wings above the Tai Chi diagram. It's enough. That guy's true qi had a large amount of impurities, and after refining it and compressing it, not much of it remained. Su Meiyao spoke. Humph, next time don't do it again. Bai Yuyu angry voice sounded out, making Chen Xiang's whole body tremble. Chen Xiang immediately smiled apologetically and said, Yuyu, sister, I was wrong, there will be no next time. I know that you wouldn't dare do it again, Bai Yuyu crooned. Although he hadn't entered the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, Chen Xiang still felt that his strength had been enhanced by quite a lot, as the small explosions that were generated during the compression of his true qi had enhanced the quality of his true qi. Chen Xiang previously could blow up a tree with a rice grain-sized true qi, but now with the very same amount of true qi, he was able to blow up 10 trees. This was because a grain of his current true qi was made by compressing 10 grains of the previous true qi, steeply improving its quality. This was the result of his constant cultivation. This compression of true qi was simply boundless, and the more he wished to exceed the previous quality, the more he must try to compress it even further. But this compression process was very arduous, because it requires the absorption of large amounts of spirit qi and converting it into true qi. Chen Xiang asked, Meiyao sister, using the divine exercise of 4 symbols. I can only congeal 4 forms, yet I've 5 elements of true qi. What form will my earth true qi congeal? In the Wu Tai Chi divine exercise, there is a divine elephant. However, when I was congealing its form, I chose to congeal a lotus. An elephant. Chen Xiang felt a burst of joy in his heart, because in his mind, the elephant was the most powerful beast. Chen Xiang was still sitting on the top of the tree, and because Judu Gang had been dealt with, this area was now safe. It was at this time that he took out Ju Duzi's storage pouch, and looked inside to find if there was anything valuable. There were a lot of items inside, however. The majority of these things were similar to the poisonous needle hidden weapon. Poisonous powders, poisonous herbs were also present, and there were some antidotes and dawn. There were also some large spirit coins, and all of these things were useful to Chen Xiang, because if he was to encounter any form of danger on the path that was laid ahead of him, these hidden weapons and poisonous herbs could be used to attack others, which made it a pretty good harvest. Chen Xiang also found a square jade box inside the storage pouch. He took the jade box out, but when he tried to open it, he found to his surprise that he wasn't able to open it. Try using your divine sense. There must be something inside this jade box, and only with a strong divine sense will you be able to open it. Su Meiyao spoke, as although she was inside the ring, she was still able to see outside. Chen Xiang immediately poured his divine sense into the jade box, but he was immediately panic-stricken. This jade box was like a bottomless pit. Moreover, it was engulfing his divine sense, and even when he wanted to retrieve his divine sense, he found that it took him a lot of effort to do so. After a few seconds, Chen Xiang felt dizzy, but at this time the jade box stopped engulfing his divine sense and automatically opened. Chen Xiang only saw a walnut-sized jade pearl inside it, and this jade pearl was also placed upon a yellow divine beast skin. At this point, Bai Yuyu and Su Meiyao came out from inside the ring, and they stood on a thick branch at the giant tree top next to Chen Xiang, intently watching the thing that was in Chen Xiang's hands. This is an inheritance bead. As long as your consciousness enters this inheritance bead, you'll be able to receive the message that is inside, said Su Meiyao. She took out the beast's skin padding below the inheritance bead, and the beast's skin had been folded over many times, so after unfolding it open, it was very large. So in other words, this bead contains information that was left behind by other people? Chen Xiang asked. Right, some sex deans use this kind of method. A majority of the deans pass down their martial skills in this way, so this inheritance bead may contain a martial skill or an alchemy experience left behind by others. Bai Yuyu said. Chen Xiang felt delighted in his heart, as he had not expected that Jiu Duzi would actually possess this kind of a treasure. He immediately poured his consciousness inside the inheritance jade pearl. Immediately after, a large amount of information suddenly surged into his mind, and after reading all of the information in his mind, his face was full of ecstasy. Chapter 0071 New Road. Chapter 0071 New Road. What is inside the inheritance bead? Su Meiyao, seeing Chen Xiang so happy, quickly asked. Hey, it is Refiner's Scroll, and it also contains some refiner's experience. Chen Xiang laughed. The demand for refiners was much more than the demand for an alchemist's, and low-level refiners could be found everywhere, but there were only few grand refiners, who were capable of refining formidable equipments. These people were like alchemists in reputation. But after Chen Xiang saw that refiner's scroll, he was suddenly very confident that it would allow him to become a formidable refiner. Of course, though, he would still have to put more practice into it than alchemy. Su Meiyao took the inheritance bead, and after taking a glance, on her face emerged out a charming smile. This is a really good thing. There actually is a tutorial for refining brilliant grade weapons. Moreover, there are many schematics, so you better try to have a good grasp of it. Of course. Chen Xiang said with a smile. What is painted on the beast's skin? It is a map, said Su Meiyao, and at the same time she handed over the inheritance bead to Bai Yuyu, letting Bai Yuyu take a look at it. What map? Chen Xiang quickly asked. A map leading to a herbal garden, but to open this herbal garden you need a key, and method to refine this key is inside the inheritance bead. Su Meiyao said. Chen Xiang quickly went through all the information that entered his mind inside just a moment ago, and soon found the refining method for the key. The materials required were very easy to find, but the difficult part was engraving the complex spirit veins on the key. The key is in my hand, It fell off while opening the map. Bai Yu spread her white palm, only to see a small key with the size of a finger, while being covered in golden patterns. Those spirit veins were producing bizarre power, and these patterns were created only after numerous years of research by countless refiners. All equipments must have spirit veins on them, otherwise it would be just an ordinary grade equipment. Chen Xiang's brilliant flame dragon furnace had many complex spirit veins inside and outside of it, and this was the reason which allowed the brilliant flame dragon furnace to have that bizarre power. The majority of spirit veins are only Pa-S, said Down, and as long as the spirit veins are precisely carved upon the equipments during its refinement, then it can be considered successful. This is not that difficult, and that's also why there are many refiners. This thing looks like it is many years old, and if the garden is still there, then maybe there will be a lot of mature spirit herbs. Su Meiyao laughed. Chen Xiang nods his head and asked, "This herbal garden is where?" "It's on the way to the extreme martial sect, so it seems you have to leave early for the extreme martial sect. If this herbal garden has a lot of spirit herbs, then you should be able to enter the 9th level of the mortal martial realm," said Su Meiyao. Finally going to extreme martial sect. Chen Xiang was slightly excited. "I'll go back now and settle everything, and bid farewell to my father." After returning to the Chen family, Chen Xiang first went to Chen Tianhu, and seeing Chen Xiang returned safely and in one piece, Chen Tianhu let loose a big breath. "Good, you were able to come back," said Chen Tianhu with face full of affection. "Dad, your complexion has recovered a lot. This is a detoxification Dan. After you take it, it'll allow you to recover quickly," Chen Xiang said with a smile, and then threw a bottle to Chen Tianhu. This Dan bottle he obtained from Jiu Duzi could detoxify a majority of the poisons. Chen Tianhu did not ask how Chen Xiang dealt with the Judegang, as he knew that if Chen Xiang could bring back the antidote then the Judegang was no more. He clearly knew Chen Xiang's style of doing things. "Dad, it's about time for me to depart." And although Chen Xiang said this with a face full of smiles, but in his heart he was very sad. Chen Tianhu slightly sighed and then said with a smile, "Yes, you ought to go because there you'll be able to fully realize your potential, and by allowing our Chen family to have a foothold in the King City, you've already contributed too much to the family." "Dad, I'm leaving." Chen Xiang stood up, walked towards Chen Tianhu and hugged him. "And you've grown up, I'm very relieved. Take care." Chen Tianhu was completely sad. While he patted Chen Xiang's back, he knew that after Chen Xiang left to go to those martial arts sects, it was possible that he would only come back after many years. Chen Xiang gave Chen Tianhu some mortal-level high-grade dawn, then left the Chen family, and rushed straight to the Dan King Hall, after which he bid farewell to Chen Luzhong and Meng Bo, embarking on his way to the extreme martial sect. While parting, Chen Xiang felt a little melancholic, but he was also very looking forward to again meeting them in the future, as he believed at that time he, his father and the whole Chen family would have earth-shaking changes. Chen Xiang from afar looked at King City, and looking at one of strongest city in the secular world where many strong experts reside, countless emotions surged in his heart, as although there were many experts inside the city, but compared with those martial arts sect, it can be considered as nothing. "Xian, here I come." Looking at the distant mountain range stretching 10,000 li, Chen Xiang clenched his fist, and fiercely broke into a gallop. If he wanted to go to the extreme martial sect, then he would have to pass through the mountain forest frequented by a large amount of demon beasts. It was a long way to go, full of danger, but as long as he safely reached the other side of the forest, he would have reached the place with plenty of spirit qi, and that is the location of those martial arts sects. The secular world and the gathering location of all martial arts experts was separated by a very large mountain range, and any weak person who entered this mountain range will meet their end. "Meiyao's sister, how is the research going for that Dragon Slayer divine martial skill? Is it any good?" Chen Xiang asked, as he now urgently wanted to learn more powerful martial skills. Rest assured. Wait for me and senior sister to thoroughly research this book, and at that time we'll tell you how to learn the previous dragon martial technique again, so do not worry. Su Meiyao replied. Having these two mysterious beauty as companions, Chen Xiang was very happy, and they were equivalent to his teachers, always patiently guiding him and even helping him conquer the miseries of cultivation. Chen Xiang had already memorized the route to the herbal garden, and after he entered the piece of forest as similar to a big mountain, it was very easy for him to find the starting point of the route, as a seemingly gourd-shaped mountain was present in front of him, which was the first route marker. In order to find that herbal garden more quickly, Chen Xiang used vermilion bird firewings, and he spread his wings and soared high into the sky. The vermilion bird fire true qi of his has already congealed out of form, and thus after the compression, his true qi was much more vibrant, so he did not have to worry about his true qi suddenly running out. In order to not let anyone find him flying in the sky, Chen Xiang entered the layers of clouds, and hid himself inside of it. His speed of flying was too quick, and all of a sudden he entered the depths of that mountain forest. Moreover, this way he could also avoid some of the demon beasts, and although he did not fear the demon beasts, avoiding some of the problems along the way was rather convenient. The location of the herbal garden was very dangerous and also hidden inside the mountain range, located in one of the small valleys inside. Chen Xiang had been ing for 3 days on the road, and only after this period of time did he see that mountain valley, but inside that mountain valley there was nothing. Chen Xiang swooped down from the sky and landed inside the mountain valley, and although this place's scenery was very beautiful, there were poisonous miasma drifting outside the mountain valley, as well there being various poisonous weeds. There was one cave inside the mountain valley, which was indicated on the map, and although Chen Xiang looked around for a bit and then found that cave, this cave was blocked by tall weed. He took out a long knife and chopped off those weeds, then cautiously entered the cave, taking out a torch for illumination. This place is hidden. If there was no map, it would be really difficult to find. Chen Xiang muttered, as he could not understand why this herbal garden was inside the cave. After entering the depths of the cave, Chen Xiang was blocked by an iron door, and he tried a bit to open it, but no matter how hard he tried, he was not able to shake that iron door. Also, regardless of how much strength he used to strike that iron door, the cave didn't even shake a little bit, and if he was attacking an ordinary mountain, it would have collapsed into large pieces long ago. This door should be absorbing your power. Honestly, use the key to open it, said Su Meiyao. Chen Xiang quickly found the keyhole on the door. He inserted the key, turns it, and heard the kacha sound. As the iron door gradually opened, a dazzling light shone from inside out. With the opening of the iron gate, Chen Xiang was completely shocked by the scenery inside. Chapter 0072, Big Harvest. Chapter 0072, Big Harvest. Unexpectedly inside the iron gate wasn't a pitch-black mountainside, on the contrary, it was filled with spirit herbs and spirit trees, and this beautiful mountain valley was filled with bright light. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu quickly came out, and after they saw this, confusion was clearly visible on their faces. All the spirit herbs here are more than 1,000 years old. Su Meiyao said. 1,000-year ginseng, 1,000-year spirit GRAS. 1,000-year profound spirit ginseng, 1,000-year earth spirit GRAS. Although some of these spirit herbs were auxiliary in nature, but after all they were more than 1,000 years old, and now many of these looked like a big turnip. Chen Xiang estimated there were a few hundred of these herbs. There are almost 20 metal spirit fruits and 1,000 vein fruits, and there are also more than 100 purple spirit fruit. Fuck asterisk 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 asterisk. This father is not dreaming. Ah! Chen Xiang cried out loud with surprise, and his heart was fiercely beating because he was incessantly excited. Although a purple spirit fruit was not as precious as a metal spirit fruit, but it was still very expensively sold in the market, as it was one of the main herbs in refining a type of spirit pill. Humph, why re you so happy with only this small amount? What a be you, Mpkin? Bai Yuo coldly said. Chen Xiang curled his lips and said, I know that the two sisters' origin is out of the ordinary, and of course in your eyes these things are nothing, but currently for me they are all nothing but treasures. Quickly help me pick all of these spirit herbs. It should be enough for me to refine spirit level dawn. Chen Xiang excitedly said. Currently he didn't know how to refine spirit level dawn, and he knew that he would definitely fail many times, but in this herbal garden there were many auxiliary spirit herbs, so they could allow him to save a lot of his expenses. Only someone like Chen Xiang would make the two peerless beauties work in the field, which also made Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu secretly despise him. I'm not a man, and this beauty is used to pain but not used to the dirty work. Although these words were on Su Meiyao's mouth, she still started to pick those spirit herbs which were more than 1,000 years old. Humph, do not be loquacious. Bai Yuyu snorted, making Chen Xiang immediately shut up, as he did not dare to offend this frosty beauty. After half a day's worth of time, the majority of the spirit herbs which were thousands of years old, in this herbal garden, had already been harvested, and stored inside the residence of Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu inside the storage ring. There are 120 purple spirit fruits, more than 20 metal spirit fruits, and 1,000 vein fruit, which should be enough for me to refine the foundation building Dan. A big grin was visible on Chen Xiang's face, as the foundation building Dan was not only useful for people entering the true martial realm, but was even taken by people who had already entered the true martial realm, as this pill can allow them to raise their power level, so it was a very useful profound level Dan. If names for Dawn and stuff change, please forgive us. The names will also change in previous chapters once we reach them. The high-grade spirit level true elemental Dan was already considered to be very precious, not to mention the profound level Dan, which was even a grade above the spirit level. However, Chen Xiang was not currently anxious about the issue of whether he was capable of refining it, as it would take a long time for him to learn how to refine high-grade spirit level dawn, not to mention refining profound level dawn. Inside the herb garden, some of the spirit herbs were in their growth period, and all these herbs which were auxiliary in nature, were also several hundred years old. Chen Xiang was in no hurry to pick them. As of now he had hundreds of thousand-years-old spirit herbs. Moreover, all of them were very big. There are a lot of powerful arrays inside this herbal garden that can not only allow sunlight to shine through this thick rock, but can also gather a large amount of spirit qi, which allows this herbal garden to breed these spirit herbs. It seems that the man who created it certainly must have left the mortal martial world, said Su Meiyao while looking at this beautiful mountainside. Leaving the mortal martial world meant that they had the power to break through S.P.A.C. Chen Xiang was also very much secretly yearning for it, but if he wanted to get to that state, he did not know which year or month he would reach such a stage. Chen Xiang, here you can be at ease and calmly cultivate, and enter the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Once you're done you can again leave for the extreme martial sect, said Bai Yuyu, looking like a high and might empress while she was wearing a dress Ning with a golden aura, which looked blee and elegant as the soft sunlight shone upon it. Chen Xiang bought this dress for her. Moreover, she liked to wear it a lot, and now that her and Su Meiyao could wear these beautiful clothes and bathe in sunlight, this made them feel very joyous. However, if it wasn't as a last resort, then they didn't want to stay inside that ring. Chen Xiang now needed a sieve amount of true qi to congeal out the forms for the other 3 attributes of true qi, and it should be known that he engulfed 1/10th level mortal martial realm prac. 1. Tionier, but he was only able to form 2 of the attributes of his true qi. One should then consider how much true qi he needed to transform the other 3 attributes true qi into their forms. The spirit qi in this herbal garden was very rich, and in addition to that Chen Xiang also had the yin and yang divine veins. Chen Xiang closed his eyes, and he imagined himself in a spirit qi sea that was simply absorbing the spirit qi. Even after all this, it would still take quite a long time for him to enter the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Now Chen Xiang knew why the people who entered the 9th level of the mortal martial realm in the secular world are at an old age. This was because of the severely spirit qi in the secular world. Now you should start learning how to refine a true qi dan. During the daytime you should refine them, while at night you should eat those dan. At the same time as when you digest its potency, you must also absorb the spirit qi, said Su Meiyao, who then began sing her experience of refining the true qi dan to Chen Xiang. The Grand Elemental Dan was a high-grade mortal level dan, which was capable of producing a large amount of true qi, and thereby improving the speed of cultivation. The true qi dan was much better than the Grand Elemental Dan, as it was a low-grade spirit level dan, and was also one of the most popular dan in martial arts sect. The true Elemental Dan was a high-grade spirit level dan, similarly also capable of producing true qi, but was a lot more expensive than the true qi dan, and ordinary people cannot even afford it. The true qi dan required only one main herb, and that was the purple spirit fruit. Currently, Chen Xiang had more than 120 of these, and also had lots of auxiliary spirit herbs, which generally only needed to be 500 years old. But if 1,000-years-old auxiliary herbs were used to refine the dan instead, then only a little bit of it would be needed, and it would also be very cost-effective. Chen Xiang took a deep breath, and started digesting the alchemy experience set on by Su Meiyao. Afterwards, he began sorting the herbs, separating each set from one another, and from this he would know how many times he had failed since he started. Chen Xiang took out his brilliant flame dragon furnace, and Bai Yuyu immediately rushed to a distant area, while quietly chatting with Su Meiyao, as their sisterly bond was very good. Although Bai Yuyu was cold, she was very good to Chen Xiang and Su Meiyao, but if it was anyone else, she would be disinclined to pay any attention to them, let alone talk to them. Not long after Chen Xiang began, he failed, and purple smoke burst out from the brilliant flame dragon furnace. On the 2nd try, he failed once again, and until the 10th try. Only then had he entered the intermediate alchemical stage, and at this stage he had to bake all the herbs into herbal powder, and started fusing the herbal powder and herbal spirit qi. But at this stage, he failed once again. Goddam. Nit, this purple spirit herb is like one bad apple spoiling the whole bunch. Ah, I always fail, and this purple spirit fruit is the root of my trouble. Chen Xiang complainingly cursed. Distant Su Meiyao giggled and said, "It is inevitable for the high-level dan's main and auxiliary herbs to conflict, and the higher level the dan is, the more obvious the conflict is, and the more difficult it is to resolve. This is simply your job to explore." Su Meiyao had been extremely proud of her own alchemy talent, but after the appearance of this freak Chen Xiang, she had to bear twice as much. But now seeing the expression of Chen Xiang, who was experiencing failure, she was very happy to laugh. Chen Xiang cast aside everything, and looking at that charming Su Meiyao's face Briming with a happy smile, he secretly cursed in his heart. "Meiyao sister, how many times did you fail?" asked Chen Xiang. "Are you testing my memory?" "My memory is very clear, and it was 72 times. Su Meiyao said, and although she failed so many times, she was very satisfied with this number. It must be known that other alchemists, if they had not failed more than 100 times, they were said to even say they had learned how to refine the true Qi Dan. Chapter 0073. Succeeded. Chapter 0073. Succeeded. Chen Xiang muttered in his heart, "I'll let you be happy for now. Wait for me and I'll definitely make you unable to laugh. He rested for a moment and then continued refining, but this time, he did not use the brilliant flame dragon furnace, rather he took out the inferior black alchemical furnace of his that was given to him by his father. Oh? Using the brilliant flame dragon furnace will let you save time, otherwise you will not even be able to finish refinement once in one day, said Su Meiyao. You do not need to mind my feelings, it does not matter, said Bai Yuyu, as she thought Chen Xiang was worried that she would not be able to adapt to the exposure of the peculiar breath of the flame dragon. From then on Chen Xiang had not paid any attention to the two beauties again, and with complete dedication he started refining the Dan. During the night, a beautiful soft moonlight shone through the special array, penetrating the thick rocks and Ning on the mountainside in the herbal garden. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were lying on a bed, and the two beauties were cuddling with each other. With even breathing, they were already inside their dreamland. It was very rare of them to nap in this situation, but as they were very relaxed around Chen Xiang, they could sleep soundly. Chen Xiang was refining dawn, and once in a while he took a peek at the beautiful and attractive sleeping postures of the two beauties. Seeing this, his mind was already a mess, and his furnace nearly burst due to this. It would be nice if I was able to sleep in the middle of them. Chen Xiang secretly thought this in his heart, and if this idea came to be known by Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu, he definitely would have been despised by them for a very long time. A day and a night went by, and only then did Chen Xiang enter the last stage of alchemy process, the solidifying Dan stage, but in the end he still failed. Among the number of failures, Chen Xiang had learned to be very calm. He had a large amount of herbs, moreover, with only 1,000-year purple spirit fruit, he would be able to refine the true Qi Dan 10 times, and he had more than 100 of these, so he didn't believe he would encounter failure with all of them. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu only entered the ring when they took a bath and changed their clothes. Chen Xiang found out that these two beauties liked to change their clothes several times in a day, and they never wore the same clothes. Moreover, they were also happy in showing it to him. Every time Chen Xiang saw them coming out after changing their clothes, he would offer a few good and remarkable praises, but every praise of his was different every time. This flattering was just a scratch on the surface for him, and always let Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu's hearts be filled with joy. Chen Xiang knew these two Yaoxing had already lived for more than 1,000 years, but in the end they were girls, and girls, more than anything, liked to wear beautiful clothes. All day blindly swaying in front of men, but men only liked to watch if they weren't wearing any clothes. Yuyu's sister, Meiyao's sister, I'll continue to buy more beautiful clothes even after entering the martial arts sect, and I think those places should have many other styles. Chen Xiang said while laughing. You brat. You're quite good at playing gooseberry, and you know the ways to flatter us, said Su Meiyao with a gentle laugh. Thanks, Bai Yuyu said in a low voice, and though her voice was still cold, Chen Xiang, who listened to it, seemed to find an inexhaustible gentleness. Rest assured, I'll try hard to elevate my strength, and as soon as possible, I'll help you recover your strength and eradicate your enemies, so that you can wear the clothes I buy and freely roam in the world. Chen Xiang said with earnest look on his face, and this moved the hearts of Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu. They were now seriously injured, and not mentioning the fact that they still had an enemy, even some slightly powerful experts could easily defeat them. Chen Xiang was their only hope, and in their eyes Chen Xiang was behaving like a sensible brother, so they were very pleased, even though he sometimes saw them with a wicked expression in his eyes. Again a day went by, and Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were fast asleep cuddling together. When the sunlight shone down on them, they opened their pretty eyes. However, they saw Chen Xiang with both his eyes closed, and with serious face, sweating profusely and refining pills, as he was at the most crucial stage. This was Chen Xiang's 12th try in refining the true Qi Dan, and having this much progress, Su Meiyao thought it was an accident. A moment later, Chen Xiang took a long deep breath and opened his eyes, his whole face briming with happiness. He looked towards those two beauties sitting on the bed, and laughingly said, "Two sisters, how about you try the fresh breakfast I just made?" After speaking, Chen Xiang opened the lid of the black alchemical furnace, and inside there were 5 true qi dawn glittering with a purple light, which made Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu endlessly shocked. Their beautiful faces were full of an unbelieving expression, and quickly rushed towards that alchemical furnace and saw the breakfast inside. Only Chen Xiang could casually treat these true qi dawn as breakfast. "Meiyao sister, I only failed 12 times, but also refined it with an inferior alchemical furnace. It seems that learning to refine pills with the lowest grade alchemical furnace is a lot more subtle. Meiyao sister, this little brother is ashamed, I was not able to reach yours 72 failure mark." Chen Xiang grinned, and seeing this Su Meiyao could not wait to knock out those white teeth of his. "Infuriating little rascal, when I failed 72 times at that time I was praised as a genius by my teacher, but you—" Su Meiyao tooted with her little mouth, and though her face was full of hidden bitterness, but in her heart she was very happy. "Continue to try hard, and now use the brilliant flame dragon furnace. It'll allow you to refine a lot more in a shorter amount of time." Bai Yuyu with her jade-like finger picked the true qi dan, and put it inside her beautiful little mouth, lightly chewing. This appearance of hers was truly attractive. On the other hand, Su Meiyao was still flighty, and while Bai Yuyu was eating, these two beauties were showing the most charming aspect of theirs. Chen Xiang, who was watching this, was dazed, and in his heart he could not wait to put them in his arms, caressing them nicely. With an inferior alchemical furnace it took him a little more than a day, but using the brilliant flame dragon furnace it only took him half an hour to refine it twice, and at the beginning he still failed while using the brilliant flame dragon furnace, but once he was familiar with the process, thereafter there were no failures. During the day it was alchemy, and during the night it was cultivation. Chen Xiang was harvesting the true qi incomparably quickly. Every day he was able to refine the low-grade spirit-level true qi dan 10 times, with a total of 50 dawn. In the evening, after eating the dawn, he cultivated and continued to compress a large amount of true qi that was brought about by the true qi dan. Time flew by so fast, and in blink of an eye 3 months had passed. Although Chen Xiang was repeating the same routine every day, but with the two peerless beauties as his companions, he didn't get bored. Now Chen Xiang had already congealed out 4 true qi forms: the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise. These 4 divine beasts inside his dantian appeared to be fuzzy, and although he had not actually seen these 4 divine beasts, nevertheless, after cultivating accordingly to those 2 divine exercises, he was mystically able to mold out the divine beasts' forms, which secretly amazed him. Chen Xiang was now 17-year-old, and he was now going to impact on the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Only after congealing the last true qi form would he be able to successfully advance into this new stage. If Chen Xiang had not cultivated in this special way, he would have already entered the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, as he had to cultivate several times more when compared to other people. At the center of the Tai Chi Yin and Yang diagram within Chen Xiang's dantian, there was a ball full of earth true qi, but currently it was absorbing a massive amount of pure true qi and rapidly growing. Moreover, at the same time it was also being compressed, and gradually a form was appearing out of it. This form was that of an elephant, which suppressed the Yin and Yang diagram at the center. Spirit qi from all around this mountain valley was madly surging into this mountain valley, and therein madly absorbed by Chen Xiang. That elephant form had slowly been taking shape, and now Chen Xiang, with his huge divine sense, was established. Plus in contact with these 5 beast forms, integrating them into one form. "I've succeeded!" Chen Xiang shouted loudly, and suddenly invisible qi undulations burst out from his body. This was the universal true qi, and whenever he wished, he can arbitrarily integrate 5 elements of true qi into one body and release the universal force. Chen Xiang, using the congealed embryonic stage 5 divine beasts forms, compressed a large amount of true qi, then once again using the invisible true qi congealed out universal true qi, and destroyed the big door of the 9th level mortal martial realm. Chen Xiang, at just 17 years of age, entered the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Chapter 74, Entrance Fee. Chapter 74, Entrance Fee. Chen Xiang, as he watched those 5 divine beast forms be molded out by compressing a large amount of true qi in his dantian, could not help but sigh because of all of that boundless true qi. Common 10th level mortal martial realm experts were not his match. As for true martial realm martial artists, as he has not seen or fought them yet, so he couldn't draw any conclusions. Good brother, your imposing manner is comparable to what mine was in the past. Su Meiyao nodded her head in satisfaction, her face filled with a charming smile. Chen Xiang proudly smiled. 2 sisters, now can I go to the extreme martial sect? Perhaps I can also get you some brand new clothes. Little rascal, you really know how to make us happy, said Su Meiyao with a soft snort. You can, but you still have to be a little cautious. Inside these martial sects there are hidden dragons and crouching tigers, and in their eyes, with this little bit of strength, you're still an ant. Bai Yu cautioned. Although she and Su Meiyao were only active in this herbal garden, they still felt very happy. Su Meiyao and Bai Yu entered the ring. Chen Xiang walked out from the herbal garden and arrived at the inside of a mountain valley. His body shook a little while a pair of fire wings emerged from his back. Chen Xiang took a fierce leap, jumping several tens of zhang high in the air. The pair of vermilion bird fire wings behind his back flapped, making him soar in the sky. As he flew deeper and deeper into the forest, the spirit qi became richer and richer, and this caused Chen Xiang to be surprised, as he knew that the martial arts sect were located in a place with very rich spirit qi, but he wasn't aware of how rich the spirit qi was. Now that he had personally experienced this rich amount of spirit qi, he understood why so many people yearned to join these martial arts sections. It is similar to paradise here, said this while looking over the cliff of a high mountain. A giant river was flowing nearby, and there were numerous singing birds in that lush green forest below that was rich with spirit qi. In this side of the world, martial arts sects have the strongest influence. Of course, next to martial arts sect there are numerous families and empires who have similar influence. However, here there are also ordinary people who cannot practice martial arts, and these people are not few in number, said Su Meiyao. As Su Meiyao spoke, Chen Xiang stood in awe of how big and strange the world was. Martial arts sects here have an ancient inheritance, meaning they were formed around various styles created by martial artists a long, long time ago. As time passed, these martial arts sects started to develop and became even larger. As more and more people joined, they exploited more and more abundant resources. As a result, strong experts were as common as clouds here. While flying, Chen Xiang suddenly heard a sound of disturbance below. He went down, only to see a person fighting a giant bull whose entire body was wrapped in flames. This was the demon beast, a kind of species who knew how to absorb spirit qi between heaven and earth. These beasts had innate spiritual veins, and it didn't matter whether their strength was strong or weak, every part of their body could be considered a treasure. Chen Xiang dived down and landed next to the intense battlefield, and that flaming bull was unexpectedly fighting a seemingly 18 to 19 years old fat teenager, whose appearance was quite matching. His appearance was similar to that of an expert bully. At this moment the fat teenager wrinkled his brow. His face was looking serious while dealing with the flaming bull at the other end. His strength was not bad, as he cultivated metal true qi, and his martial skill was also looking good. When he punched out, he played out his entire true qi. "Brother, do you need any help?" Chen Xiang, who was now standing close by, asked. He could see that the fat teenager's foundation was not weak, and he guessed that he should be in the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Elder brother, I fought most of the fight and now you appear. You say you want to help me, yet I bet you just want to steal my catch. Not worth it. That fatty's reply made Chen Xiang vomit blood. Unexpectedly, this fatty was haggling over this. I simply do not need the reward, I just want to take a look at how formidable this demon beast is. Chen Xiang said with a smile. That's not okay, so be it, I'll give you the bull's leg. The fatty said, and to Chen Xiang's surprise this fatty was so principled. Good. Chen Xiang, while speaking, took a step and in the blink of an eye, arrived behind the flaming bull. Chen Xiang's fist was starting to get wrapped in a golden aura of slaughter chi which was surging out, thereafter forming a golden-white tiger head. Chen Xiang used White Tiger Storm Killing Fist, but also used Metal White Tiger True Chi. His fist struck the thick body of that flaming bull, emitted a thunderous sound, and his golden aura flashed and blasted a B-L-O-O-D-Y hole through the thick skin of flaming bull, which made the fatty astonished. Elder brother, what type of fist attack did you use just now? It was so overbearing. Fatty asked with surprise. At the same a fist struck over the bull's head, and a fearsome chi aura burst out which even shook the air. The flaming bull emitted a heavy roar. While the flaming bull was angry, Chen Xiang took advantage of this opportunity and let a rain of blows strike on the fat body of that flaming bull. In the blink of an eye, he had punched out 10s of fearsome and tyrannical heavenly tiger storm killing fists, and a strong chi aura paas said through the bull's thick skin, shaking the internal organs of the flaming bull. The angry flaming bull immediately vomited a mouth full of blood, and then that bull was no longer able to use its strength. At this time, that fatty clasped his fists together, and held them high above his head, looking similar to a giant hammer. His fists fell towards the bull's head, and vigorous metal true chi transformed into a chi aura wrapped around his fists. In the blink of an eye, with thunderous sounds accompanied with chi waves flying in all directions, the bull was killed. Brother's fist technique is not bad, Chen Xiang said while praising, as he calculated the strength of this martial artist, and at such young age he was so amazing. That fatty smiled. I am called Zhu Rong, what's the honorable name of elder brother? Chen Xiang. I'm only 17, and Zhu brother called me elder brother, you called me old, but I'm younger than you. Chen Xiang smiled, cupping his fists as he spoke. He did have an air about him that made others think he was more mature than his physical age. Zhu Rong grinned. It seems I really called you old, hee, but I also suffered a loss. Regarding this, let's start from a clean slate. I guess I should call you younger brother? You're 2 years younger than me and already so amazing. You must certainly be from some famous family, but I do not know what family that is. Tielin, okay, so maybe it is little bit confusing, but here's some insight. Here Zhu Rong called Chen Xiang Leoj, and Chen Xiang is only 17 and he is 19 years old, and hence the intended pun. Leoj, affectionate form of address for a male who is not older than oneself. Laudi, affectionate form of address for a male who is not very much younger than oneself. Lao, old. Chen Xiang guessed Zhu Rong's family must do business, otherwise every time he opened his mouth, he wouldn't have talked about transactions. I came from that side secular world, Chen Xiang truthfully said. Zhu Rong was starting to deal with that body of the flaming bull, and chopped down a leg for Chen Xiang, but also intentionally cut too small, which even made Chen Xiang somewhat dumbfounded. So do you want to enter the extreme martial sect? Zhu Rong asked, the other end of that flaming bull entirely received in the storage pouch. And, Zhu brother, are you a extreme martial sect's disciple? Chen Xiang asked rhetorically. Zhu Rong followed behind him. Luckily I became an extreme martial sect's disciple, and although your strength is pretty good, but you cannot enter the extreme martial sect, said Zhu Rong while looking proudly. Why? Chen Xiang asked curiously. Because you do not have a family behind you, and you should know that the extreme martial sect is different from other sects, and while all other sects receive their disciples, they provide the best welfare for those disciples, while the extreme martial sect charges fees while receiving disciples. Zhu Rong said this point, and his face was full of contempt, as one could see that he very much fancied money. Chen Xiang had already heard of this thing before. That's why Su Meiyao made him take out metal spirit fruit for Ling Yulan. You mean to say I cannot afford to enter extreme martial sect? Chen Xiang asked. Chapter 75. Extreme Martial Province. Chapter 75. Extreme Martial Province. Chen Xiang examined Zhu Rong from top to bottom. Although his appearance was a little bit mature, he was wearing very ordinary clothes. His clothing lacked any kind of visible ornaments, resulting in a very poor visage. Do you know how much the extreme martial sect charges? Just the cost for a year will make you retreat in defeat. Zhu Rong pursed his lips as he spoke, but suddenly he heard a kacha sound, as if someone was biting a fruit. Zhu Rong was a connoisseur of fine foods, and he immediately turned his head, only to see Chen Xiang holding a purple fruit, taking a bite one after another, even going as far as spitting out some of the peel. Zhu Rong was stunned for a moment, then immediately shouted, "Idiot, are you using purple spirit fruit for such thing? Quickly stop eating. F.U. C.K. your mom. Those peels are extremely valuable and you're actually spitting them." Purple spirit fruit was the main herb for refining true qi dan. To just consume the fruit was simply an extravagant waste. Upon seeing this, Zhu Rong could not wait to seize it from Chen Xiang's hands. In his opinion, to just directly eat the purple spirit fruit was simply a blasphemy. Chen Xiang's facial expression remained indifferent. This purple spirit fruit is very tasty and sweet too. There is even rich true qi released after eating it. The gluttonous Zhu Rong turned dark red as he boiled in anger, although the purple spirit fruit was not his. Watching it being eaten in such a way caused him to have a heartache. "Stop eating it, I'll buy the purple spirit fruit," Zhu Rong quickly shouted, but just before he finished speaking, Chen Xiang swallowed the rest of the 2/3 of the fruit. Zhu Rong boiled as he felt an urge to rush over and shatter Chen Xiang's chin. "How much does it cost to enter extreme martial sect for a year?" Chen Xiang asked while smiling. Zhu Rong stamped his foot as he snorted with anger. Your type will never enter the extreme martial sect." Although he did not Chen Xiang's ident. 1. Tai, he was very certain that he was extremely rich, otherwise he would not dare to eat purple spirit fruit so casually. "Forget that I even asked," Chen Xiang said as he took out another purple spirit fruit to consume. "Outer sect disciples need to pay 3,000 middle-grade crystal stone for a year." Zhu Rong quickly said, then took out a few fingerhead-size blue stone, and gave to Chen Xiang. "Here, 10 middle-grade crystal stones for your purple spirit fruit." Crystal stones and spirit coins were similar. They both were a kind of ore that contained spirit qi. However, the pure spirit qi compressed inside a crystal stone was much greater compared to a spirit coin. Chen Xiang had learned from Su Meiyao that on this side of world, middle-grade crystal stones were the main currency used for trading, and a middle-grade crystal stone was equivalent to 1,000 large spirit coins. That is to say, 10 middle-grade crystal coins were worth only 10,000 large spirit coins. "Zhu brother, do you think I am a pig? This is the main ingredient for refining true qi dan. Do you think its value is only worth this much? I might as well simply eat it," Chen Xiang said while pursing his lips. 30, said Zhu Rong with a deadpan look. Chen Xiang shook his head, and started walking towards the front. Zhu Rong was quick to follow. He shouted, 50. Chen Xiang ignored him completely. 60. 100. 150. 200. Chen Xiang turned around and said with a smile, "Just a moment ago you wanted it to buy for only 10 crystal stones, but now, compared to a moment ago, the price is many, many times greater. You definitely are a racketeer." Chen Xiang handed the purple spirit fruit over, as he received a pool of crystal stones in return. Don't you know, my Zhu family is famous in extreme martial province for doing business. We will even fight for a coin if it fell in front of us. There is no way we would leave it alone. Zhu Rong honestly said as he looked at the fruit. Purple spirit fruit prices in extreme martial province are extremely inflated, because its prices have been raised by the merchants. Chen Xiang suddenly felt that he may have made a loss in the transaction, but 200,000 large spirit coins was also his bottom line. Although Zhu Rong was only a small racketeer, Chen Xiang talked very congenially to him since Chen Xiang now had a more thorough understanding of this side of world. The region he was in was called the Extreme Martial Province, a large piece of land under the jurisdiction of Extreme Martial Sect. It was very vast, and all the different powers in this region had to pay tribute to the Extreme Martial Sect, and in turn the Extreme Martial Sect would guaranteed safeguard. Junior brother Chen, in the future, do not eat the purple spirit fruit like an idiot. If you were seen by those alchemists, you will certainly be beaten by every one of them. Zhu Rong said urgently. As he thought of Chen Xiang eating a moment ago, his heart was secretly in pain. For Chen Xiang it does not matter, as long he had dragon saliva exercise. He could quickly create purple spirit fruits if he ever ran out. Zhu Lao, you said is it possible for me to enter extreme martial sect right now? Chen Xiang said with a laugh. Zhu Rong with a sinister smile said, sell me 10 purple spirit fruit and it will be possible, but you have to go through extreme martial sect A.S. assessment to be able to genuinely enter. This is every sect's criteria. Chen Xiang followed Zhu Rong and came to a city. This city was called Tianmen City, and from here, the extreme martial sect was not very far away. Quite often, many people who wanted to join the extreme martial sect would stay here. Arriving there, Zhu Rong and Chen Xiang bid each other farewell. Zhu Rong said he must return, because unqualified people were not allowed to enter extreme martial sect at will. Heavenly Gate. This is the entrance to extreme martial sect? Chen Xiang stood next to the city gate, looking at the bold and powerful characters. Tianmen is written on the city gate. Chen Xiang was reading out loud. As long as one walked across the city, one would be able to see a straight avenue. At the end of this avenue there was a huge luxurious building that was comparable to a city. That was the extreme martial sect. Little brother, this is a level 6 ordinary grade weapon. Discount price. Only 999 crystal stones. One fellow standing at a store in trance shouted as he waved towards Chen Xiang. Just like Chen Xiang, there were also many other people who were looking around after having entered the city. Many of them were country hicks who had entered the city for the first time and were most likely to be deceived. Weapons and armors could be divided into ordinary, spirit, and brilliant grade weapons. Each grade was further divided into 9 levels. Ordinary grade weapons were the lowest ranked, and no matter what suitable material was used for forging, they were the most common materials. But a level 6 ordinary grade weapon was also considered to be not bad, and was close to an ordinary weapon of the 9th level. Little brother, want to buy some pills? A high-grade mortal level Grand Elemental Dan can be purchased for just 55 crystal stones. 2 DQNS will only cost you 100 crystal stones. An old man from a medicine shop shouted. Chen Xiang observed that within this extreme martial province, Dan stores were located in almost every nook and corner of extreme martial province. He could not help but be somewhat surprised. He went over and asked, do you have a purple spirit fruit? Of course I have it, only for 300 crystal stones. That old shopkeeper answered. Chen Xiang's mouth twitched slightly. He had really been fooled by that fatty, and that fatty in the start actually wanted to buy with 10 crystal stones. This time Chen Xiang also knew that here at this side of the world, dawn were rather expensive, much more expensive than that they were in the southern martial empire. This was a good thing for him, because he was an alchemist. He was now already able to see many white Hi plus Ning crystal stone, and he also found out that one true Qi Dan costs 500 crystal stones here. Moreover, they were also a limited purchase. Chen Xiang strolled around in this Tianmen city, and sold a few true Qi Dan, and soon collected as much as 3,000 crystal stones, which was also the entrance fee for the extreme martial sect. Although he had Su Mei Yao and Bai Yuyu's inheritance, but after entering a sect he could learn more things, learn more martial skills, also with the Iden. 1. Tai of a sect's disciple, he could partake. 1. P8 in all kinds of compet. 1. Tians, where the winner was also rewarded by the sect. Chen Xiang walked towards the giant door in the distance. As the giant door was opened, many people came out. These few days the extreme martial sect had opened their mountain entrance to recruit disciples. So many people came here to enter the sect, but the majority of these people were here to try their luck. Chen Xiang Pas, said through that giant door, walked on a straight and sias bricked avenue. In the distance, extreme martial sect was surrounded by a 20 or so zhang high wall. Chen Xiang also had believed previously that the extreme martial sect was built on top of a mountain. Chen Xiang stood in front of that huge entrance, watching extreme martial sect heavenly gate, these three imposing characters. In his heart could not help but upwell a heroic spirit. That giant door was still closed, but a small door was opened. In front of that small door was a very long queue, whose spiritual veins were being examined. Only those who had a spiritual vein were qualified. Of course, if there was not enough crystal stones, then it was also not acceptable. The spiritual vein was examined by standing on top of a circular disc. On the disc there was an array, which could detect the spiritual vein within the human body. Then different kinds of aura would be illuminated. Along with it, the corresponding value would appear. Chapter 76. Avenge personal enmity in the name of public interest. Chapter 76. Avenge personal enmity in the name of public interest. Although many people had spiritual veins, but most of them were unqualified, and only someone with a value above 60 will be qualified. Chen Xiang, who was lined up for half-day, had only seen 2 people to qualify. Chen Xiang, when you're assessed, you must converge metal, wood, water, earth attributes using Tai Chi divine exercise. So at that time that array will only detect your fire attribute and will show that you have fire attribute spiritual vein. Su Meiyao said seriously, as she couldn't allow other people to know that Chen Xiang had a yin and yang divine vein. This was a very dangerous matter. Chen Xiang's turn arrived, and when Chen Xiang stood on the disc, he did it in accordance with what Su Meiyao said and converged the metal, wood, water, earth attribute. In doing so, below his feet on that disc only a red aura emerged, and a strange feeling appeared in his body, while one value also appeared in the middle of that disc. Fire attribute spiritual vein, 75, qualified. What's your name? One middle-aged man asked, and though Chen Xiang had said, but looking at Chen Xiang, whose complexion was not good, his face fell. Just a moment ago Chen Xiang saw not a small number of extreme martial sect's disciples being respectful towards this middle-aged man, and looking at this one could know that this middle-aged man had some status in the extreme martial sect's outer sect. Strength was also very powerful, and Chen Xiang suspected that this middle-aged man must be a true martial realm martial artist. Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang's words made that middle-aged man to be surprised for a moment, and Chen Xiang felt a little strange, as he did not expect his name would spread to the extreme martial sect. You came from the secular world? That middle-aged man coldly asked. Yes. After hearing Chen Xiang's word, all the people around him gave a bizarre look, because people who came from the secular world were generally old men, and someone so young was very rare. Please go back. You've done all kinds of evil in the secular world. We do not accept these kind of people in the extreme martial sect. That middle-aged man sneered, his face full of hatred. What do you mean? Chen Xiang asked with a frown. When you were inside the secular world, you slaughtered one family, and also eliminated one gang called the Black Wind Gang. You've killed at least more than 1,000 people, and we of the extreme martial sect don't receive this kind of slaughtering human devil. The middle-aged man's voice became louder, and this made the people all around more surprised, even to kill more than 1,000 people. Chen Xiang said with a sneer, "If someone came to kill you, would you not fight back? Are you going to stand there and allow them to kill you? Not only did that family act against me again and again, but they also colluded with the gang to assassinate me. If I did not kill them, they were going to destroy my family. Everything that happened because they asked for it. In Southern Martial Empire, most people know it, so you must not have not investigated clearly, right?" That middle-aged man's face turned gloomy, and this time Chen Xiang once again said, "Are you that Yao family member? Humph. Do you want to use the power in your hands to avenge personal enmity in the name of public interest?" Yao Haixing, regarding this you're wrong, the other person's spiritual vein is obviously qualified, and we have also heard the things about the secular world. Indeed, your family was wrong, always wanting to exterminate others, but were destroyed in the end. That is also a matter of course. One amiable-looking, smiling middle-aged man with a long beard arrived, and behind him was actually that Zhu Rong. Chen Xiang had guessed correctly, as that middle-aged man who making things difficult for him just a moment ago was actually a Yao family member. Since he was Yao family member, then he must be an alchemist, as Chen Xiang could sense the pure fire true qi from his body, and ordinarily only alchemists were very focused on fire true qi purity. Yao Haixing gave a disgusted look to that bearded middle-aged man, and unenthusiastically said, "How Dongqing, I manage the things around here, my words counts." Chen Xiang in his heart was secretly surprised. That bearded man, How Dongqing, unexpectedly was also a true martial realm expert. Chen Xiang hadn't expected to meet two true martial realm martial artists in one day. Moreover, the strength of the true martial realm was more than what he had imagined. He was very clear that he was absolutely unable to defeat these true martial realm martial artists. "Brat, also not getting out of here, is it that you want my teacher to personally send you?" One arrogant man from behind Yao Haixing loudly reprimanded. How Dongqing faintly smiled. "He cannot leave, as today many people are witnessing this matter. If he leaves, it will be bad for the extreme martial sect's reputation." Chen Xiang knew How Dongqing was helping him, so he laughed and said, "The extreme martial sect is Qinwu mainland's strongest martial arts sect. I think it should be fair and impartial." Yao Haixing was bent on Chen Xiang not entering the extreme martial sect, so he coldly said, "Chen Xiang, you're very young, and your strength is also good, but you now need to hone your character, as your disposition is too easy to stir up trouble. Furthermore, your strength in the extreme martial sect here does not simply account for anything. If you enter the extreme martial sect, it will invite only trouble. Please go back. I have the authority to investigate various aspects of one entering the sect and becoming a disciple. Though your spiritual vein is qualified, but in regards to your disposition and strength you're not qualified. Come back after 3 to 5 years, and maybe you'll be able to qualify then. The extreme martial sect's gate is always open for you." Yao Haixing do not want to destroy the extreme martial sect's reputation, as although he was a true martial realm martial artist, but if he were to commit a mistake, he would be equally punished. "Within 5 years, as long as you defeat my apprentice Fang Liang, you can enter the extreme martial sect, and furthermore you don't have to pay a single dime. So you better go back and cultivate," Yao Haixing contemptuously said, while behind him that arrogant man with one eye also stared at Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang asked, "You said if I defeat your apprentice Fang Liang within 5 years, then after that I can enter extreme martial sect, and I'll be also exempted of all fees? Is this true?" Yao Haixing's sinister laughter resounded, and said, "Of course, you came from my hometown, and this is me giving you favorable treatment, But if you cannot win in 5 years, then you can never enter the extreme martial sect. Fang Liang? Is he that Fang family's genius, currently 18 years old, and already entered the 9th level of the mortal martial realm? Moreover, he also has many profound level martial skills, and last I heard he fought the 9th grade demon beast, the Fire Red Falcon. In the end the Fire Red Falcon was struck and died on a mountain top, and it is said that he is also ranked 13th in all the outer sect disciples. Fang Liang heard some commenting about him, and he became prouder, and his face was completely full of a proud look. Yao Haixing was also similarly proud, because he was Fang Liang's teacher. Brat, you do not even have a teeny tiny bit chance in 100 years, because within 5 years I will certainly enter the true martial realm, and you'll forever not have the chance to defeat me. Fang Liang loudly said. His arrogance was soaring in the sky, as within 5 years he would certainly enter the true martial realm. This made many people, one after another, to be shocked, as such a young true martial realm martial artist was very rare. Within 5 years if I win against Fang Liang, I really can enter the extreme martial sect for free? Chen Xiang asked again, as this kind of thing was better to be confirmed, because to him it seemed very easy. Before he had heard to enter the extreme martial sect's outer sect, he had to go through a series of complex assessments. So many people are listening here, do you think I'll lie to you? Within 5 years you can come whenever you want and challenge him. Now quickly go, you're making many people who want to test their spiritual vein wait. Yao Haixing impatiently waved his hand, driving away Chen Xiang. You said within 5 years I can come whenever I want and challenge him? This is what you said. Chen Xiang grinned and said, I want to compete with him today. Chapter 77 Asking for Trouble. Chapter 77 Asking for Trouble what? Chen Xiang wanted to compete with the genius Fang Ling today? This made many people surprised, but Yao Haixing and Fang Liang were also shocked. Just a moment ago Hong Dongqing also helped Chen Xiang because he was very interested in watching what was about to happen. Zhu Rong, however, secretly despised Chen Xiang because he had just found out that Chen Xiang was an alchemist, and previously, when he had first met him, Chen Xiang had portrayed himself in a much more low-profile manner. Ha! Quit joking and quickly leave, lest you get injured. During a compet. 1. Tian, it is difficult to control one's strength. If you get wounded, it will certainly slow you down. Come back after a few years of cultivation. Yao Haixing waved his hand and said. How the Yao family was eliminated was not very clear. He only knew that Chen Xiang was the cause of this incident. He speculated Chen Xiang's strength might be equivalent to the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, but in his opinion, the difference between a secular 9th level of the mortal martial realm and an extreme martial sect 9th level of the mortal martial realm was like heaven and earth. If people want to fight, they should go ahead and fight. Hong Dongqing said. He glanced and smiled at Chen Xiang. Concerning this fight, I'll be able to waste him in just one move. Fang Liang had a look of impatience. Chen Xiang didn't even expect there to be Yao family members in the extreme martial sect. Furthermore, they were also in the true martial realm. Fortunately, there were some rules in the sections. People from this side of the world are not allowed to cause trouble in the secular world. The people standing in line for assessment all spread out. Although their assessment is delayed by this battle, they looked forward to watching a good fight as they get to see Fang Liang fight. The crowd looked forward to seeing the strength of the outer sects number 13. Forewarned, if you're injured, you cannot blame the other, blame yourself for being a waste. Fang Liang loudly said. Chen Xiang nodded his head and said, if you are seriously injured, it is your own fault and cannot be blamed on the other. Correct? Do not talk nonsense, let's go. Fang Liang, with a look of irritability, took a step forward, only to hear Yao Haixing shout, start. Fang Liang was the first to act, and he began running, each step exploding outward with lightning, like he was running on lighting. He moved very quickly, and both of his fists were also wrapped in white lightning. This was pure lightning true qi. Chen Xiang's lightning true qi contained the wood attribute inside, and was different from pure lightning. High-grade profound level, treading lightning steps, running will result in Ma's sieve impact force. This fist art is the high-grade profound level, shocking lightning fist. And from what I have heard, with this fist art, one can split a small mountain. Its power is enormous, said one well-informed martial artist. Chen Xiang originally was a lightning expert, and when he started to cultivate wood true qi, he also often incited lightning to temper his body. He was struck by violent, natural lighting, but he was still able to bear it. As of now, lightning did not pose any threat to him, not to mention the fact that his body was also very formidable. Everyone believed that when Chen Xiang was struck by the shocking lightning fist, a bloody hole would be left. The crowd braced themselves, in order to resist the explosion from the lightning true qi. However, they were all amazed, because what they envisioned didn't occur. Fang Liang jumped out, his momentum increased by the lighting at his feet, and at the same time, also punched out a shocking lightning fist, striking towards Chen Xiang's chest, but when his fists came in contact with Chen Xiang's chest, it felt similar to stones sinking in the sea. He didn't get a bit of response, because, in that moment, Chen Xiang operated Tai Chi divine exercise, and his body was truly like a giant vortex, in which any kind of power striking it would, in the end, be sucked in by the vortex. Chen Xiang guided the lightning to temper his body. He does frequently, and that was also why his lightning true qi cultivation was better. Extreme martial sect, I'll definitely enter it. Chen Xiang laughed as he spoke. His fist blasted towards Fang Liang, who was still dazed, and a Ma's sieve amount of flames surged from his fist, similar to a volcano erupting. In the blink of an eye, Fang Liang was embroiled in flames and sent flying by the momentum of Chen Xiang's fist. His whole body was quickly incinerated by that intense fire, and he was rolling on the ground howling. Fang Liang! Yao Haixing shouted with dismay and hastily flew towards him. He waved his sleeve, and the flames were immediately dispersed. Fang Lang was burnt black from top to bottom. It was obvious he was severely injured, as the meridians within his body were also burnt. Though it was quite hot, all those who were watching felt their bodies drenched in cold sweat. A simple fist attack defeated the 13th outer sect disciple of the extreme martial sect. When everyone thought about how Fang Lang previously looked down upon Chen Xiang, they were struck by the humor of the situation. I won. Now is it possible for me to enter extreme martial sect? Furthermore, I won't even have to pay crystal stones. Chen Xiang grinned. Yao Haixing was furious, just as he wanted to say something, but he saw how Dongqing speaking with a smile. Yao Haixing, previously this precious disciple of yours said, if during the compet 1. Tian gets hurt, that is their own matter, and he was not going to blame the other. Is it that you want to destroy your apprentice's promise? Also, you said Chen Xiang can enter the extreme martial sect. Moreover, he does not need to pay the other expenses. These crystal stones must come from you because you made him a promise. Chen Xiang said with a laugh, Senior Brother Yao, you're really going to pay the crystal stones for me? I'm really grateful. Yao Haixing's face fiercely twitched, in his mind. Chen Xiang was only an ant, and with just a pat of his palm Chen Xiang would be dead. But if he did so his good days would come to an end, because the rules of the extreme martial sect were very strict. I'll remember this. Yao Haixing picked up the burnt body of Fang Liang and entered the extreme martial sect inside, and at this time the person responsible for assessment was also changed. Chen Junior Brother, welcome to extreme martial sect. Come with me, I'll take you to complete the formalities. Zhu Rong, that little fatty, shouted, and while watching Chen Xiang the expression in his eyes were as if he was looking at a lot of crystal stones. Chen Xiang laughed and walked past. Many thanks, senior brother Hao, otherwise I would have been driven away by him. I just said a few words, that's is not counted any help, but saw this guy digging few fiery pits for himself and his apprentice to jump into, and I was truly laughing to death. Of course, you also pushed them into the fiery pit that they dug with their own hand. How Dongqing's laughter resounded as he turned around and left. Little fatty, how is senior brother Hao related to you? Is he your teacher? Chen Xiang, following behind Zhu Rong, asked in a low voice. To have a true martial realm martial artist as a teacher, that was also a very good thing. He is my uncle. By the way, you actually knew alchemy and also wasted a purple spirit fruit, you idiot. You really like to show off. Zhu Rong, thinking about Chen Xiang eating the purple spirit fruit, his heart could not help but feel slightly sore. Chen Xiang scoffingly said, You treacherous fatty, in the beginning, you wanted to buy my purple spirit fruit for just 10 crystal stones. Just a moment ago I asked other people, and they are selling it for 300 crystal stones. You bought it from me for 200 crystal stones, you cheated me. Zhu Rong curled his lips and said, That is the price we agreed to, I did not force you. Chapter 78. 3000 Martial Courtyard. Chapter 78. 3000 Martial Courtyard. Do you have a sister? Are they also formidable like you? Introduce them to me, Zhu Rong hastily asked, his eyes lighting up. Go fuck your sister. Even if I had a sister I wouldn't introduce her to you, said Chen Xiang with disdain. Now that he had entered the sect, he wanted to find Ling Yulan, his stepsister. He was now her brother and as a brother, he wanted to take good care of her. Zhu Rong snorted in a low voice, Do not look at me like this. Many girls who came for this entrance test throw themselves on me. This daddy is the Zhu family's great young master, and also an inner sect disciple of the extreme martial sect. Chen Xiang was surprised by the fact that Zhu Rong was an inner sect disciple. He had heard that only someone of the 10th level of the mortal martial realm could enter the inner sect. Zhu Lao, in the past few months have you heard about a white-haired girl coming to the extreme martial sect for the assessment? Chen Xiang asked. I remember, I'll never forget her. Zhu Rong immediately said, his complexion turned serious. This girl was very extraordinary. She actually had a fire and ice dual vein. Furthermore, they seemed to be heaven veins. She wanted to enter the extreme martial sect, but other people took her away? What? Chen Xiang was very surprised. He had not expected that Ling Yulan would have Tian veins, moreover be taken by another sect. If it was a devil path sect, wouldn't that be bad? Rest assured, she was taken by the people of Icewind Valley. That place is more suitable for her. She should not be your unrequited love, right? Relying on your talent, you do not even deserve her shoes. Zhu Rong contemptuously looked at Chen Xiang. He knew Ling Yulan came from the secular world, only then would he think like this. Chen Xiang sighed and said, She is my sister, sworn stepsister. You're joking, how can you have that immortal-like character as a sworn sister? If she was your sister, then Xue Xian of the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire is also my sister. Zhu Rong loudly shouted, as he could not accept this fact. Chen Xiang had also not thought that Xue Xianxiang was actually so famous. His sighing sound was heard once again. Xue Xianxian is my fiancé. Fucku. This bastard is cracking jokes now. You should be careful what you say, otherwise you may be beaten flat by those who have a crush on Xue Xianxian, so do not blame me or say that I did not warn you. Xue Xianxian and Ling Yulan are but recognized as the strongest women among the younger generation. In our hearts they are like fairies. If you violate or offend them again, I'll beat you up. Zhu Rong angrily said. Chen Xiang shook his head and sighed, while in his heart he said, Xianxian is really my fiancé and Yulan is really my stepsister. Zhu Rong with Chen Xiang came to one large courtyard, and inside this courtyard many people were comparing notes with each other. They were not using true qi, and they were only using their physical strength, but their attacks were still unusually strong. This is the 330th martial courtyard. The smaller their numeral digit, the stronger it is. The 330th martial courtyard is the strongest martial courtyard in the outer sect, and as you defeated that Fang Liang guy, this is the most appropriate place for you. Zhu Rong said. Everyone in this martial courtyard suddenly quieted down, because they had also heard the information about Fang Liang being defeated. Fang Liang was the 13th ranked disciple in the outer sect, and was unexpectedly defeated by a newcomer. This was but explosive information in the outer sect. Everyone looked carefully at Chen Xiang. Everyone here were very able-bodied, and the youngest was about 20 years old, while the eldest was about 50 to 60 years old. A total of 50 people, and this was the strongest martial courtyard in the outer sect. In other words, the strongest disciples in the outer sect were also in here. Old man Zhang, this brat will be handed over to you, Zhu Rong said to one old man. Although he looked like a fat meatball, Zhu Rong was still an inner sect disciple, so even the strongest disciples of the outer sect were full of respect when they see him. Younger brother Chen, try hard to enter the inner martial courtyard earlier, and do not die in the outer martial courtyard. Zhu Rong patted Chen Xiang's shoulder and sped away. When the disciple of this martial courtyard saw Chen Xiang and Zhu Rong have such a good relations, Hi+P, they could not help but feel a little uncertain. They definitely tried to guess which family Chen Xiang came from. Junior brother Chen Xiang, about the matter of you defeating Fang Liang, I've also heard. Please come with me. That old man Zhang said. Chen Xiang followed behind him, leaving the sight of those outer sect disciples in this martial courtyard, and at this time these disciples also started discussing. That old man Zhang was called Zhang De. He was 70 years old, and was at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, but had failed to enter inner sect, because he had stayed in the extreme martial sect for too long, so he just passed off as this courtyard's chief. In other words, he was the strongest person in the 330th martial courtyard. Zhang De was a very good person, always having a gentle smile on his face, and was very considerate towards others, which made Chen Xiang have a very favorable impression of him. Senior brother Zhang, is it really hard to enter the inner martial courtyard? Chen Xiang asked. Difficult as ascending heaven. It has already been 15 years since I entered the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and partook 1p. Aided in 15 AS assessments, but in all AS assessments I have never passed, said. Zhang De said with a long sigh as he handed Chen Xiang a storage pouch. This is the extreme martial sect's uniform, ident. 1. Thai card and some introductory books about the extreme martial sect and this world. To enter the inner sect, one must pass through an AS assessment. This was not like what Chen Xiang had previously heard. One must be in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm to enter the inner sect. It seemed that the extreme martial sect was very strict. Chen Xiang once again followed Zhang De for a long time and then arrived at his own house. This was but a small residence, only suitable for one person, but Chen Xiang was very satisfied. Junior brother Chen, this is the strongest outer sect's martial courtyard, which only had 50 people. That's why we have this kind of treatment, so you have to carefully keep this position. I'll leave now, so you should familiarize with this environment first. After Zhang De left, Chen Xiang opened those books and started understanding more about the extreme martial sect. The 8 major righteous sects are divided into the extreme martial sect, the divine weapons heavenly empire, the Danxiang Taoyuan, the Icewind Valley, the beast martial sect, the proud sword sect, the true martial sect, and the Lotus Island. The 5 great devil sects are divided into the Devil Yang clan, the myriad Snake Valley, the Blood Refining clan, the 100 Poison sect, and the Transforming Bone clan. Every major righteous sect commands one province each, while the 5 great devil sects are gathered in one large province, called the Chunwu Nine Province. Chen Xiang read through the introductory book. Although Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu had once told him about the world, there were many more details written in this book. After reading it, Chen Xiang lamented, saying, "This is just the Chunwu continent, and it is already so big, and in addition to this, outside the seas there are other continents. This is not the end. We are in this mortal world, which is the lowest level world, generally called a mortal martial world. There are hundreds of thousands of them. Each one has countless mainlands." Bai Yuyu said with disdain. Above mortal martial world is the heaven martial world, of which there are a couple dozen. The martial artists in that world are equivalent to immortal-like existences, their powers are much stronger. Su Meiyao continued after Bai Yuyu. Chen Xiang swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He suddenly felt like he was a grain of sand in a huge world. He shook his head, he did not want to go down. The extreme martial sect has a total of 3,000 martial courtyards. 330th to 3,000th martial courtyards are outer martial courtyards. 16th to 329th martial courtyards are the inner martial courtyards, and the 1st to 15th martial courtyards are core disciples' martial courtyard. They are also the most powerful force in the extreme martial sect. Above the 3,000 martial courtyard there is 10th martial courtyard, and that is the elder courtyard. A group thousands of years old codgers live in it. The extreme martial sect's dean is the 0th martial courtyard's chief. Chen Xiang continued to look at the introduction of the extreme martial sect. Chapter 79 Outer Martial Courtyard. Chapter 79 Outer Martial Courtyard. There were many outer sect disciples. However, the inner sect disciples' count took a dive, and the core disciples were even meager to count. Besides, there were only 15 core disciple martial courtyards. Usually, all core disciples were above the true martial realm. As long as you have enough strength, you can not only enter the elder courtyard but can also sit on the 0th martial courtyard's chief's position. That is if you can defeat the dean. Hearing this, Chen Xiang had a kind of a whimsical idea, which was to get that 0th martial courtyard's chief's position. Of course, it was just an idea, as it should be known that these dean-level characters had been living for hundreds of years and were somewhat like old monsters. The 0th martial courtyard's chief position is much more difficult to achieve, but the extreme Dan courtyard's chief position shouldn't be that hard. Su Meiyao said with a light laugh. The Extreme Dan Courtyard was the organization responsible for dawn here in the extreme martial sect. Although there was only one courtyard, it was however divided into 8 small courtyards where all alchemists dwelled. Only a second-level alchemist can enter the Extreme Dan Courtyard. Now I want to take a look how many levels. Chen Xiang illuminated a list and saw that a first-level alchemist was required to be able to refine 3 different kinds of middle-grade mortal-level dawn. A second-level alchemist was required to be able to refine 3 kinds of high-grade mortal-level dawn and a low-grade spirit-level dan. The requirements to become a third-level alchemist were high, and one must actually be able to refine 3 kinds of middle-grade spirit-level dan. Currently, Chen Xiang himself was only a second-level alchemist. 9th level was the highest rank of any alchemist. Above it was the Great Dan Master, Dan Ancestor, and then Dan King. Chen Xiang remembered Su Meiyao saying that she was just a Dan Ancestor, and she was capable of refining heaven-level dawn. At last Chen Xiang once again looked at the next aspects of refining weapons. Refiners were rare in the extreme martial sect, and there were hardly any. While the Chunwu mainland's divine weapon Heavenly Empire was most developed in regards to refining weapons, the strongest in alchemy was Danxiang Taoyuan, and mainly the extreme martial sect's strength was powerful. That Lung Yulan went to Icewind Valley, which only cultivated in extreme yin and yang, and had the lowest amount of disciples. Nevertheless, their strength wasn't weak, as their true qi is very extreme, so their overall strength is strong. Although among the 8 major righteous sects, the extreme martial sect was recognized as the strongest, if the extreme martial sect and another sect fought, the extreme martial sect won't win the fight without paying a large price. Meiyao sister, Yu sister, how about I find a way to make a grandmaster alchemist here to refine a dan for you? That way you will soon be able to recover from your injuries. Chen Xiang's eyes lit up at the moment. Are they able to refine sacred level dan? Bai Yu asked. Sacred level dan. Chen Xiang had not even heard of what they were speaking of, let alone seeing it. Is there no one here capable of refining it? Chen Xiang asked. At least from what I have heard, they temporarily don't have anyone. Not to mention sacred level dan, those who can refine heaven level dan are rare. Su Meiyao said with a sigh, but you may just be able to as long as you cultivate and collect good herbs because you have the dragon saliva exercise. Chen Xiang hadn't expected that he actually needed to refine a sacred level dan. How high of a level was this existence? First, enter the inner sect, then we will talk about it. Only after entering the inner sect would I be able to learn a satisfying martial skill. Chen Xiang said because outer sect disciples at best could only learn low-grade profound level martial skills, while high-grade profound level and earth level martial skills needed the qualifications of an inner sect disciple to learn. At the 10th month of every year, it was the inner sect assessment, which was just around the corner, and Chen Xiang hadn't expected that it would arrive in such a timely manner. Chen Xiang climbed onto the roof, watching all the numerous buildings around him. In the innermost part of the deep region, strong people were gathered like clouds in the inner courtyard. The extreme martial sect's disciple enjoyed much of their freedom, and sect disciples were provided with a large number of martial skills. The extreme martial sect also had arranged some experienced old martial artists to teach the disciples, and there were also many types of equipment to aid in their training, as well as the martial stage for the disciples to fairly compare note. Sometimes, the extreme martial sect arranged some missions for their sect disciple to complete, and these missions protected the extreme martial province from danger. Chen Xiang put on the extreme martial sect's uniform, which was a gray leotard, made of a material which could even withstand ordinary flames. Ordinary swords also could not penetrate it, and it also fit tightly to the body, making people feel very comfortable. It also had a warm in winter and cool in summer effect. Chen Xiang arrived in the middle of the martial courtyard, and in the middle there was one small square stage. All around the square stage there were some buildings, and inside these buildings was the equipment to help the disciples with their training. Newcomer, I heard you came from that secular world. It seems that you are very powerful and was able to defeat that Fong Liang in a matter of seconds. One teenager came and said with a look of admiration. From those previous books, Chen Xiang had learned Shenwu mainland was shaped like a triangle, and that the secular world was located in one of its corners. That corner was also across a large mountain range, isolated from the 8 major provinces, and had spirit qi, which led to not many strong experts being there. Chen Xiang slightly smiled and said, "That guy underestimated the enemy too much, that's why he lost miserably." Teenager laughed and said, "That's true since that guy Fong Liang had wars. Plus PETA teacher, he became arrogant. I wanted to teach him a lesson early on myself." This teenager's skin was dark, and he was shorter than Chen Xiang by a head. Although he didn't look very strong, he gave off the impression that he was quick, capable, and vigorous. His eyes glittered with sleekness, had an amiable smile, but there were a few scars on his face, giving off a dy feeling. Yun Xiaodao, are you thinking whether or not to bully the newcomer once again? From afar one middle-aged man said with a smile, "Chen Xiang, this shorty standing in front of you is this courtyard's strongest disciple, but he doesn't want to become the courtyard's chief and has not challenged the old man Zhang yet. Yun Xiaodao rubbed his nose, contemptuously sighed, glanced at that fellow, and said, I just wanted to compare notes with him. Martial artists originally often want to compare notes. In this square, there were many people, and they all had temperate and gentle smiles on their faces, making Chen Xiang feel very harmonious in this martial courtyard. Moreover, he also learned from other people that they all thought that Feng Liang was very annoying. Chen Xiang had just arrived. That's why people in this martial courtyard didn't start to cultivate, rather chatted with Chen Xiang and informed him of some things. Chen Xiang at this time just knew that Yun Xiaodao came here 3 years ago, and from the 3000th martial courtyard fought his way up from there. He was very strong, at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and he had a prominent origin. He was a member of one of the extreme martial province's 4 aristocratic families, the Yun family. At this moment Yun Xiaodao, with an avid expression in his eyes, was watching Chen Xiang and spoke, Great brother Chen, except for the old man Zhang here, I've fought with everyone here. You also have to fight 1 round with me, and no matter if you win or lose, I'll give you 5 true qi dan. How does this sound? Old man Zhang was Zhang De, this martial courtyard's chief, but all martial artists in here called him in the same way. Chen Xiang knew Yun Xiaodao was very bellicose. Moreover, he was this courtyard's strongest disciple, which meant that he was the strongest disciple in the outer sect. Xiaodao, you're in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, while I'm in the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. The difference is too big, said Chen Xiang while shaking his head and smiling, and to his surprise, this Yun Xiaodao was actually only 16 years old. Inside this Qinwu mainland's martial forest was where the talent really poured forth, and young and powerful martial artists could be found everywhere. But you're 1 year older than me, so you have the advantage. Rest assured, I'll be lenient, and whether you win or lose, I'll give you 5 true qi dan. Yun Xiaodao pestered. He was not planning to let Chen Xiang go until he fought with him. Chapter 80 Outer Courtyard First Disciple. Chapter 80 Outer Courtyard First Disciple. In the eyes of other martial artists, 5 true qi dan might be very good, but give Chen Xiang half of an hour and he could refine them out, and currently he did not want to get seriously injured. Instead he wanted to prepare for the upcoming inner sect assessment. Yun Xiaodao, this time with a sinister smile, said, Great brother Chen, I've several sisters. Each one is very nice, so if you and I compare notes, I'll introduce them to you. Chen Xiang could not help laughing. You brat, do not try fool me. You just said you'll introduce them to me, but later I won't be able to pursue them, right? Yun Xiaodao stuck out his tongue. Why do you have so little confidence in yourself? I've heard you know alchemy. My sister's first preference of a man is an alchemist. Rarely has there been an alchemist like you who is young, smart and handsome. Fuck, your mother's why this flattery is not bad. I'll reluctantly fight a round with you. Chen Xiang said with a smile, but as for your sisters, leave it for others, I already have a fiancé. Seeing Chen Xiang promise Yun Xiaodao, other martial artists also cheered up, because they also wanted to take a look at Chen Xiang's strength. By observing and emulating other battles could they themselves also learn some experiences. Yun Xiaodao was also delighted, like a child. He very readily took out 5 true qi dan and handed them to Chen Xiang. He was a Yun family member, moreover, he was also talented, so in aspects of dan he was simply not lacking. Great brother Chen, to tell you the truth, even if I introduce my sisters to you, they will not fancy you. The standards of these women can be high. Yun Xiaodao took a side glance at those sitting disciple at the square edge, and these disciples revealed an angry expression. Apparently they had been fooled by Yun Xiaodao. This time, Zhang De ran over hastily and said with a smile, You and a newcomer are having a compet. 1. Tian, how can it proceed without me? I'll preside over it, and at appointed time will immediately stop you, as I don't want anyone getting injured in a friendly compet. 1 Tian. Chen Xiang and Yun Xiaodao went to the middle of the square, and here the floor was paved using a kind of very sturdy brick. They were very difficult to destroy, therefore one could fearlessly fight till the end. Xiaodao, are you going to partake 1p8 in the inner sect assessment? Chen Xiang asked. I've partook 1p8 3 times, but each time in the second round I failed. I just entered the 10th level of the mortal martial realm this year, so this year I'll be able to enter the inner sect. Chen Xiang nodded his head, and his complexion turned serious because he felt a peculiar martial artist true qi from Yun Xiaodao. This type of true qi gave people a kind of feeling that was very terrifying. However, it was very docile inside Yun Xiaodao's body. It should be fire and lightning true qi. He should have a mutated fire-lightning vein, said Su Meiyao. Extreme martial sect, 3,000 martial courtyards, 100,000 disciples. People who could come must be someone with decent strength. After coming here, Chen Xiang had met many young and strong martial artists, and in his front of him was a 16-year-old teenager in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. This was the strongest person in the outer sect. Watch out, fire-lightning chain! Yun Xiaodao loudly shouted, and from his palm a fiery red-colored lightning suddenly spewed out, surging with fearsome hot qi, and hitting Chen Xiang's body. This fire lightning, upon touching Chen Xiang's body, immediately tied down Chen Xiang, like a very firm chain, making Chen Xiang unable to move. Hey, great brother Chen, you lose, said Yun Xiaodao while giggling, only to once again see both of his fists explode with that fearsome fire-lightning qi aura. Although Chen Xiang and Yun Xiaodao were separated by 3 zhang, but Chen Xiang could feel that strong qi aura, and even the ground was slightly trembling. In the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, true qi was compressed again. After this compression, it also elevated the quality of the true qi, doubling their true qi qualitatively and quantitatively when compared to the previous 9th level of the mortal martial realm. But Yun Xiaodao didn't spend his true strength, otherwise it would be more frightening. At this moment, Chen Xiang operated his true qi, trying to get rid of the qi aura chain binding him. While the fire-lightning chain was binding him up, it also continued to burst with lightning and scorching flames, which in turn entered into his body. If not for him using the Tai Chi divine exercise to continue to refine them, he would certainly be a little tormented. Yun Xiaodao swooped over, both his fists shooting towards Chen Xiang's chest. When they were about to arrive, Chen Xiang fiercely opened his mouth, and a dragon roar resounded. A large amount of azure qi aura was suddenly ejected from Chen Xiang's mouth, carrying terrifying lightning, and forming one huge momentum that flew towards Yun Xiaodao and hitting him. The sudden attack made Yun Xiaodao fly about 10 zhang. This confused Yun Xiaodao, and his hair was in a mess. Chen Xiang lowered his head and shouted, only to see the fire-lightning chain binding him suddenly burst open, forming a qi waves which blew in all directions. Great brother Chen, you are quite shady, and actually have these kind of tricks. Yun Xiaodao had a look of displeasure. However, in his heart he was secretly thrilled, because Chen Xiang had not been defeated all of a sudden. The people all around who watching were also secretly shocked. Chen Xiang having this kind of martial skill also came as a surprise to them. True qi could be discharged from the mouth. It was indeed a kind of very shady martial skill. The quality of Chen Xiang's true qi was not worse than those at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm as a result of being compressed, because just a moment ago if Chen Xiang had not fused the azure dragon and vermilion bird true qi, it was also very difficult for him to get rid of the fire-lightning chain. Xiaodao, I'll attack you now. Chen Xiang gripped both his fists, and azure dragon lightning true qi overflowed from his fists, and once again at the same time scorching vermilion bird red fire true qi emerged out. At this time Chen Xiang had also used fire lightning true qi. This duel turned out to be a duel between fire lightning true qi and fire lightning true qi, and everyone standing was immediately excited because it was worth watching. They also found it a little unusual because they had learnt Chen Xiang had a fire spiritual vein, but he was still able to come up with lightning true qi. Chen Xiang took one step and arrived in front of Yun Xiaodao. Watch out, a heavenly tiger storm killing fist. Finished speaking, numerous fists with tiger head after images burst out, surging out one after another with pressuring aura qi, pounding at a breakneck speed, cutting through the air and shaking the floor. Similar to a bombardment of lightning, it madly flew towards Yun Xiaodao, each one in blink of an eye. Chen Xiang punched out 100 times, and every fist was containing the strength which was capable of destroying a small mountain. Good fellas, this martial courtyard's second rank is yours. Yun Xiaodao clenching his teeth said. With a palm full of qi aura, constantly waving, he was actually able to keep up with the speed of Chen Xiang's fist. It looked as if he had countless palms whilst resisting the impact of Chen Xiang's fist that was like violent storm. I want first, Chen Xiang said while laughing and vainly shouted, White Tiger Divine Fist. Punching out one White Tiger Divine Fist, suddenly a slaughter qi enveloped the center of this martial courtyard, and everyone could not help but have HI plus ver run down their spine as they fell into a kind of inexplicable fear. Only to see both of Chen Xiang's fists suddenly transform into two tiger heads with soaring slaughter qi, and every time he blasted a fist, it was as if a ferocious monstrous white tiger with slaughter qi impacted, making people fall into fear. Cloud palm. Yun Xiaodao complexion turned stiff, palms crossing each other, and a fire lightning qi aura from both of his palms gushed out. It transformed into a pair of giant palms crossing each other, and were warding in front of Yun Xiaodao. Chen Xiang's White Tiger Divine Fist struck that pair of giant crossed palms, and emitted boom sound one after another. The floor below also fiercely trembled, triggering storms one after another, blowing all around. At this time Chen Xiang's battle intent was rising, as he rarely met opponents with considerable strength. Rising high into the air with a leap, his palms swung downwards, and an explosive shout resounded. A huge fire palm suddenly appeared, about 20 zhang large and fiercely pressing down. This was Chen Xiang's killer move. It was to entirely release true qi of only one attribute, transforming it into qi aura which could cause heavy casualties, and its range was also very wide. Chapter 81 Equally Matched. Chapter 81 Equally Matched. A huge fire palm appeared, and everyone could not help but exclaim in surprise. Yun Xiaodao's complexion turned solemn as he once again cast Cloud Palm towards the sky, resisting the pressure from the rapidly approaching fire palm. Yun Xiaodao's Cloud Palm also became large, about 10 zhang wide, as he released the vigorous true qi of the 10th level mortal martial realm. With great power, it even pushed up Chen Xiang's huge fire palm. Chen Xiang's hey laughter sounded out, only to see azure true qi flash. HI plusing once again and surging out from his palm accompanied with fierce lightning. Along with his soft cry, a huge azure palm once again appeared, pressing down from above, and overlapped with that huge fire palm. The fire and lightning true qi became even more violent and stronger after the fusion. Yun Xiaodao's Cloud Palm was utterly defeated in an instant, and Chen Xiang's huge fire and lightning palm continued to press down fiercely. SMAs. HI plusing Yun Xiaodao to the ground. Boom boom boom. A series of explosions burst out, and a huge palm seal appeared in the middle of the square as the qi waves blew out in all directions. Every stone in its path was crushed, making an Astonies. HI plusing palm imprint on the ground. Yun Xiaodao's whole body was pressed against the ground. He cried out loudly and leaped out from the middle of the palm seal, his entire body a mess. However, he had not suffered any serious injuries. Great brother Chen, your strength was out of my expectations. I'm now going to use my killer move. Yun Xiaodao said with a serious look on his face. Just as he finished speaking, Zhang De shouted, "You're going to fight again. You'll ruin everything here. Your strengths are just about same. If you still want to decide who is better, you'll definitely be mutually wounded." Chen Xiang also stopped as he heard Zhang De. He did not expect that after completely releasing 2 attributes of true qi, he did not even defeat the other party. It was pretty clear that Yun Xiaodao's strength was in no way weak. Great Brother Chen is only in the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, and he can already fight on par with me. In other words, if he reaches the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, wouldn't that mean I would lose? Yun Xiaodao sighed. This is just great. Another little monster has joined our martial courtyard. A middle-aged man said with a bitter smile. At the moment, these children at such a young age were actually more formidable than them. Especially Chen Xiang, that kind of martial skill was very shocking and made their hearts shake in fear. Great Brother Chen, you've killed many people, right? Just a moment ago your slaughter qi was very thick. It almost scared me. Yun Xiaodao asked with a curious look. Fear could be seen deep in his eyes. Not many. I don't remember how many, but all of them were people who came to find some trouble, said Chen Xiang. I should keep this in mind and trouble you less often in future, said Yun Xiaodao with a laugh. You 2 brats, take a look around. This place hasn't been ruined for many years but now. Zhang De's old face was full of helplessness. Yun Xiaodao laughed and said, Old man Zhang, I'm the main reason for this, so I'll pay the crystal stones. Chen Xiang suddenly said, I have got to go and rest for a moment. My true qi is not rich as yours. It is almost depleted. Chen Xiang wouldn't use universal true qi unless it was necessary. It was too lethal. Moreover, he also didn't want to expose too much of his strength, but he was sure, even if he had won against Yun Xiaodao, he would also end up with serious injuries. Yun Xiaodao was indeed strong. Even after such an intense battle, he didn't consume much of his true qi. Furthermore, he didn't even use his trump card. There are a lot of powerful experts in this martial courtyard. It really is a cradle for powerful experts. Chen Xiang, while recovering his consumed true qi in his room, sighed in his heart. Chen Xiang had just left the square. Disciples from some nearby martial courtyards were coming to ask about the situation. They were all amazed by the huge palm seal in the middle of the square. They all knew how strong these bricks were. It is very difficult to destroy them without applying great power. 2 days said, and the inner sect A.S. assessment had begun to accept applications. Chen Xiang, Yun Xiaodao, and Zhang De went together to apply for the A.S. assessment as well. After registering, they left the extreme martial sect. Together, they ate and drank in a hotel in Tianmen City, but their luck was not that good and saw Zhu Rong, that money-grubbing stingy fatty. At last, they could only take Zhu Rong together with them. Little rascal Yun, I'll say this in advance, this meal is your treat. Zhu Rong said seriously while ordering the food. Why should I treat you? Asked Yun Xiaodao. Although he was a local tyrant, he did not want to spend his money on Zhu Rong. Old man Zhang is old now, maybe he will still be farting in the outer sect. Chen Xiang has just entered the extreme martial sect, and I'm a stingy fatty. Do you want all of us to leave right now? Besides, your Yun family is richer than my Zhu family. Zhu Rong said with a smile. Chen Xiang saw that Zhu Rong, Yun Xiaodao, and Zhang De had a very good relations. Hi+P. Otherwise, he would not causally speak in such a way. Furthermore, he also knew Zhu Rong was once in the 330th martial courtyard, and was also once the strongest outer sect disciple. Little pig, although this old man does not have grand ambitions from the true martial realm, but when I die, I will die as an inner sect disciple, do not underestimate me, said Zhang De confidently. Yun Xiaodao pursed his lips and said, Wait for me to enter the inner sect, then I'll definitely grab your position, do as you please for now. This hotel was very busy, and many of the customers were rich kids, mostly the disciples of extreme martial sect. They had a very low position in the extreme martial sect, but outside, the majority of them had eyes above their heads, were arrogant, and acted as if the world was dancing around them and was solely venerating their appearance. Seeing this, Yun Xiaodao secretly clenched his teeth. He couldn't wait to beat few of them to the ground. Little rascal Yun, you and younger brother Chen together might be able to get rid that B-A-S-T-A-R-D, but if it is you alone, then you will come back crawling, Zhu Rong said while looking at a man on a nearby table. When that man looked at others, his eyes always had a squinted appearance, looking with endless contempt and arrogance. As long as others came in contact with that kind of expression in his eyes, they will all feel uncomfortable. Chen Xiang didn't want to stir up some trouble. He feared that Yun Xiaodao would truly do something, so he quickly said, "Okay, after entering the inner sect, you'll have the opportunity to fight with him." Chen Xiang speculated that man must be from the inner sect. Depending on you? Coming from a secular world, do not think that it is easy to advance to the inner sect, said that man while shaking his head and laughing scornfully. F.U.C. King B.A.S.T.A.R.D. This father cannot wait to poke your eyes and stamp them. Yun Xiaodao slapped the table and cursed. He was about to rush forward but was pulled by Zhu Rong and Zhang De. A private fight? Do you want to be expelled from the extreme martial sect? Zhang De said hastily. Chen Xiang calmly continued, if I can enter the inner sect, how about you give me 100 true qi dan? In return, if I cannot enter, I'll give you 100. Only 100? Too little, how about 1,000? Squinted snake, you dare to bet? Yun Xiaodao yelled. The assessment is only a few days away, so I am willing to bet, but if it were 10 years later, I would not even dare to bet. That man said. In a few days later, Great Brother Chen will definitely enter the inner sect. Yun Xiaodao said excitedly. Chen Xiang, however, was depressed, as he currently did not have 1,000 true qi dan. Chapter 82 Revealed Power. Chapter 82 Revealed Power. Zhu Rong patted Chen Xiang's shoulder and said, Rest as. Assured, these true qi dan will be paid for by that little rascal Yun when the time arrives. I'll sell them to him, ha ha. Dead pig, are you saying that Chen Xiang will definitely lose? Yun Xiaodao said with contempt in his eyes as he looked at Zhu Rong. Since it is a bet, I cannot say for sure. But if he does win, I'm willing to buy those true qi dan since you won't be able to use all of them. Zhu Rong laughed. Fart, if he does win, I would rather feed them to dogs than give them to you. Yun Xiaodao cursed. Chen Xiang and Zhang De could only remain silent as they listened to Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong bickering. Moreover, Chen Xiang couldn't help but admire these two, as they continued to curse each other without losing their breaths while they all ate and drank. After returning to the martial courtyard, Chen Xiang asked in a confused voice, Strange, why haven't I seen any female disciples around? In the extreme martial sect there are no females. It is probably due to the fact that the extreme martial sect's ancestor had no interest in women, and thus established this rule. This stupid rule is hurting us. In fact, most disciples of the extreme martial sect bring their woman, or else they can only endure it through self-reliance. Yun Xiaodao said with a grin on his face, Great Brother Chen, you're not staying in the martial courtyard every night, are you? Of course, Chen Xiang said after thinking for a moment. He now understood why Tianmen City was always so lively. It appears that all the rich kids have brought their families with them there. You are an honest man, Great Brother Chen. Only the type of people like Old Man Zhang can honestly stay in the martial courtyard. Yun Xiaodao let out a depraved laugh and soon left. The sky turned dark as Chen Xiang returned to his room. He was refining true qi dan. Meanwhile, Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were afraid to come out of the ring because they feared that the strong experts in the area, who were as numerous as clouds, would sense them. Sister Meiyao, the extreme martial sect does not accept any female disciples, and you made Ling Yulan to come here. Seriously? Chen Xiang had originally thought that he could take care of Ling Yulan in the extreme martial sect. Humph, it's been a long time since then, how am I supposed to remember these little things? Su Meiyao said with a low snort. When Chen Xiang was out today, he brought back some exquisite dresses and beautiful jewelry for Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu. In just a few days Chen Xiang had adjusted to his new lifestyle in the extreme martial sect and in the martial courtyard, and formed good relations with his senior disciples. He was fortunate to come to a harmonious martial courtyard where he didn't have to entangle with scheming people every day. In the extreme martial sect there was one very huge square which could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. Every month, elders from the elder courtyard would discourse in the plaza. As such, most of the disciples would gather there on such an occasion. Today was the annual inner sect assessment, the most important event of the year. As long as they were outer sect disciples, they had the qualification to sign up. Chen Xiang, Yun Xiaodao, and Zhang De came in together as a team, ready to accept their first assessment. They were the team of disciples from the 330th martial courtyard. Upon seeing them, the disciples of the other martial courtyards silently made way, not daring to provoke them. Great Brother Chen, have you heard about that Fong Liang you incapacitated earlier? It seems that it will take him a year and a half to recover completely. By the looks of it, that Fong family and you will wind up fighting each other. Yun Xiaodao said with a laugh. Chen Xiang could only helplessly sigh. It could be said that he started lightly. Otherwise, he would have undoubtedly crippled Fong Liang. But he knew that the families here and that of the secular world were different. The families here had true martial experts to rely upon. The first assessment was to test a disciple's strength, and if one does not pass the test, they would be eliminated. Strength was tested by punching a pre-established array. This array was arranged on a stone wall and looked similar to a small pool of water. After a punch had landed, it would show the corresponding value that represented a measure of strength. Only upon reaching a certain value would one be said to have said. The first test is simple, we can pass it anytime, Zhang De said. The second and third tests are more difficult. I was eliminated in the second test, and old man Zhang is the same. He did not pass the second assessment as well. Yun Xiaodao said with a face filled with helplessness. What is the second test about? Chen Xiang asked as he didn't know anything about the second and the third tests. Speaking about it, a sliver of fear flashed past Yun Xiaodao's eyes. Elder Dan personally conducts the second test. It is mainly used to test the endurance while the third is an integrated test. Every year it is different but equally challenging. Elder Dan was the extreme martial sect's second strongest person and was also the only female in extreme martial sect. Rumors say that her rank was higher than the current extreme martial dean and was in charge of the extreme martial courtyard. Body knows her real name, and thus she was only referred as Elder Dan. It's my turn. Don't know if I can break my old record once again. Yun Xiaodao rolled up his sleeves and said with an expression which stated that he was looking forward to it. Chen Xiang was ranked behind Yun Xiaodao, and also wanted to take a look at Yun Xiaodao's strongest blow. Only the disciples with a value exceeding 1,000 were allowed to pass, and many outer sect disciples could only reach about 600, some could even reach 700, but there weren't many who could achieve it. From this, one could tell that the extreme martial outer sect disciples' strength was very uniform. Yun Xiaodao blasted a fist against that pool of water on the stone wall. The arm submerged entirely. When he took out his hand, a single value appeared on that calm pool of water. 2,300. Seeing this numeral digit, everyone sucked in a mouthful of cold air as the previous highest record was only 1,800. Great Brother Chen, your turn. Yun Xiaodao appeared to be very satisfied with his performance as he patted Chen Xiang's shoulder. Chen Xiang could also be considered to have a little reputation in the outer sect. He had come from the secular world. Furthermore, he had seriously injured Fong Lang with a single blow. He also had good relations with Zhu Rong and was an alchemist. Use all of your power. Only by showing your strength can one be respected. Well, it should be alright as long as you do not expose the yin and yang divine vein. Bai Yu ordered in a high-pitched tone. Chen Xiang nodded his head in response. In his dantian, all 5 elements of true qi fused together, forming the universal true qi. He then took a long deep breath and fiercely blasted a punch. At that moment, he did not release any hint of true qi, which made everyone extremely confused, because if one didn't use true qi, their strength would be greatly reduced. This time around, Chen Xiang used all of his strength. He was sure that if a mountain were to be struck by his blow, it would be destroyed. However, when his strike entered into the array on the stone wall, it remained very calm. He was secretly shocked by the strength of this mysterious array. Something of this quality was difficult to arrange by the people of the secular world. Chen Xiang punched out, only to see the emergence of a number above the pool of water. Upon seeing this value, the noisy square immediately became deadly quiet. Everyone's face was filled with horror. The first idea that went through their minds was that there was a problem with the array. However, they quickly dismissed this idea because it had never happened before. 4800. Even for an inner sect disciple, it was hard to get this value. Furthermore, this value was double that of Yun Xiaodao's. The old man responsible for supervising the tests was also surprised. He was a true martial realm pract. 1. Tionier, and when Chen Xiang had punched the array, he sensed a powerful invisible true qi through some hints, but he couldn't recognize what type of true qi it was. That old man, however, could be considered quite experienced as he immediately shouted, "Chen Xiang, a score of 4,800 pas. S." Hearing those words, the entire square exploded into commotion like a large pot of boiling water. An outer sect disciple was capable of getting the same value as that of an elite inner sect disciple. This was simply too incredible, and made it hard for others to believe their eyes. Chapter 83 Dan Elder. Chapter 83 Dan Elder TLN. We'll be using Elder Brother instead of Great Brother. Apparently it is not flowing well according to my editors. Chen Xiang was also scared as he saw the value on the array, but after some thought, he calmed down. He was cultivating all 5 elements of true qi, and the universal true qi was formed by fusing all 5 elements of true qi, and so it was no surprise that his strength had been elevated by many times. Elder Brother Chen, you're scary, and you're very cunning. The last time we compared notes, you did not use your whole strength. Yun Xiaodao exclaimed. Zhu Rong's complexion was also somewhat strange. He thought about his previous guesses of Chen Xiang entering the inner sect, but now his chances were great. At least no one in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm could beat his record. Hey, that squinted B-A-S-T-A-R-D is definitely going to lose. Yun Xiaodao said with a laugh as he thought of the gamble with deep stakes in his mind. Many disciples were partic. 1p. Aiding in the assessment, and it took the entire day, from early morning to late night, to finish the assessment. In the morning, the whole square was filled with people, but now there were no more than 300 people. Chen Xiang now knew how hard it was to enter the inner sect, as so many disciples were eliminated in the first assessment itself. The first test came to an end, and the disciples of the martial courtyard were sure that Chen Xiang could definitely pass. They didn't have much confidence to face the second test, and a shadow of doubt had formed in their hearts as many of them had always been repeatedly eliminated during the second assessment. It is late at night, yet they want to conduct the second assessment? Chen Xiang asked doubtfully as they couldn't leave even after PAS. Sing their first A.S. assessment. That is natural, all three A.S. assessment are going to be conducted one after the another. Sometimes they will even last several days, and you cannot even rest in between. Yun Xiaodao replied. Everyone stood in the middle of the square waiting for the arrival of Elder Dan so that they could start the next A.S. assessment. Late at night, silver moonlight S.H.I. plus net on the square while the cool breeze was occasionally blowing, making people feel very comfortable and relaxed. Suddenly, everyone felt very hot and stuffy, as if a heavy downpour had begun, but as they raised their heads and looked at the skies, they still able to see the stars in the clear sky. Just as everyone looked towards the skies, a person suddenly appeared before their eyes, shocking everyone. Elder Dan. All 300 disciples, and the ones responsible for conducting the test, saluted in respect. Elder Dan wore a long white skirt, and had beautiful ebony long hair, but Chen Xiang was disappointed by the fact that a black mask covered her face. It covered her entire face, revealing only her 2 eyes, but a fiery red aura was surging in those eyes. You do not need to be overly courteous, said Elder Dan as she raised her hand. Her voice sounded lazy yet cold, and was filled with a kind world-turning momentum. This made Chen Xiang think that she was somewhat similar to the divine weapon Heavenly Empire's Empress. Chen Xiang suddenly felt this masked Elder Dan gave him a familiar feeling, but he could not pinpoint who she resembled. She definitely is not Xianxian's teacher. Her voice is not so cold, and it doesn't even match her, Chen Xiang thought in his heart, removing that possibility. Elder Dan took a few sheets and quickly scanned through the recorded content of the previous A.S. assessment. As she finished scanning them, she said in a cold voice, "Not bad, the values this year is very high and there is also one with a value of 4,800. Although her voice sounded very cold and lacked any emotions, it was evident from her voice that she was also surprised. Chen Xiang felt that this kind of chilly tone was absolutely not natural. Strange, like it is deliberately manufactured, because he and Bai Yuyu had been staying together for a long time. That was why he knew how a genuine cold beauty was like Bai Yuyu's cold voice sounded very natural. Chen Xiang, come out! Elder Dan shouted. That cold voice was like an explosion in the ear, and everyone's entire body trembled, while their ears were buzzing. Chen Xiang stood and came out, with neither overbearingness nor servility replied, "Disciple Chen Xiang. Humph, do not think with your little ability you can swagger before others. I heard as soon as you came you settled some things. Moreover, in the secular world you were also not very law-abiding. For someone like you, it is best to tempered in the outer sect first, then enter inner sect, so as to avoid bigger issue in the inner sect. Are you sure you want to partake 1P8 in the second AS assessment?" Elder Dan's words made everyone inwardly shocked, as everybody could see that Elder Dan seemed to be intentionally against Chen Xiang. What type of character was Elder Dan? She was the next strongest after the extreme martial dean, and also was an alchemist. Such a character was against him, and it was clear that later Chen Xiang was going to eat a lot of suffering in the extreme martial sect. I want to partake 1P8 in the second AS assessment. Chen Xiang's brow slightly wrinkled, but with a deadpan look replied, "What I did in the secular world, I think it was the correct way." "Humph." Dan Elder coldly spoke. "You go to other end of the square, when I say, you can start walking." Dan Elder, through these words, flew into the sky, floating at the other end of the square, and her speed made everyone in their heart to gasp from shock. Chen Xiang just a moment ago knew how the test was going to be performed, and that was to walk from one end of the square to another under a kind of pressure. If one was able to reach the other end, it could be considered pass. Sing the second AS assessment. The giant square was more than 300 zhang wide, walking past it was very easy, and if one used qinggong, then it was even faster. 300 outer sect disciples lined up, standing in a line, and waited for the elder Dan at the opposite end to issue the command. Chen Xiang, you should remain where you will be tested alone. These words of Elder Dan made Chen Xiang have a bad feeling. He secretly regret obeying Bai Yu and completely exposed his own strength. At this time Chen Xiang determined that Elder Dan was intentionally against him, and he knew later on he was going to eat bitterness. He was suspecting whether or not there was any relation between Elder Dan and the Yao family, even to grant special attention to a minion. Elder Brother Chen, take care. I'll be waiting for you in the inner sect. Yun Xiaodao said gloomily, sounding full of helplessness, because he knew for Chen Xiang it was not possible for him to enter inner sect in few years. Start! Elder Dan shouted, and though separated by hundreds of zhang, her transmitted voice was absolutely clear. Also at this time, Chen Xiang sensed an invisible mighty pressure befall, and people could not help but bend their knees, as if they were carrying a giant mountain on their shoulders. Those who cannot hold, as long as they shout give up, I'll immediately send him out of the square. Elder Dan spoke coldly. Chen Xiang in his heart secretly cursed, because he was now withstanding this kind same pressure, but he had to once again partake 1p8 in the test. Obviously this showed that Elder Dan was really looking after him. Not long after the assessment started, many disciples fell on the ground, vomiting blood and directly gave up. They were directly removed from the strengthened square. It was the first time for Chen Xiang to see such a formidable expert to act, and be able to release this kind of power casually. Not to mention ordinary people, even these 9th and 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists, in the eyes of Elder Dan, were simply ants. Chen Xiang had no doubt, so long as Elder Dan was willing, she could kill him casually with one look. This is the strength of a martial artist standing at the peak of the mortal martial world. Chapter 84 does not give up. Chapter 84 does not give up. At the forefront was Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De. However, they were both walking with extreme difficulty. Each and every step was very difficult to take and was also extremely heavy. Behind them, there had been originally around 300 disciples, but now barely 100 remained. The entire square was littered with bloodstains. Each was from the blood spat out from disciples who couldn't endure. More than half an hour passed and Chen Xiang was sweating badly. Although he hadn't moved, the pressure he was under is not small. Now the only people walking in the square was 10 or so. Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De, the youth and old man, were walking in the front. But blood was already overflowing from their mouths, their whole body was also sweating bucket. This endurance test was really fearsome. Chen Xiang had once heard Yun Xiaodao say that over the many years, the large majority haven't ever said the second assessment. A little time said by as Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De reached only 10 zhang away from Elder Dan. Yet each step they now took was extremely difficult. It was as if their foot weighed 10 million jin. Zhang De became unable to bear the pressure and kneeled on the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood, but even while kneeling he was still, like before, gradually and slowly moving forward. He had already stayed in the outer sect for far too long, receiving the taunts of so many, yet now here he was, only a step away from passing the second assessment. There is no way he would give up. Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De were always eliminated at this test. That's why they were well aware of its level of difficulty, and that's why they were completely certain that after the special care provided Chen Xiang, it would be hopeless for him to pass the test. Although Yun Xiaodao was only 16 years old, he was more formidable than Zhang De. He was actually able to walk through and came up behind Elder Dan. The pressure suddenly disappeared as he fell down onto the ground. Panting and struggling to gulp down more air, he quickly swallowed a pill for swift recovery because there was an even more formidable third assessment coming up. Old man Zhang, hold on. Yun Xiaodao clenched both of his fists and shouted. He knew this type of hards. Hi+P. He understood the depth of the desire to pass through this assessment. Ah! A long and loud roar resounded. Finally, using his knees to walk, Old Man Zhang arrived to the other end of the square. At the same time, many others had chosen to drop down and give up. Because of this, they were seriously injured. Among the 300 disciples that started this test, only 2 were able to pass the assessment. Chen Xiang had been standing behind them all. He saw with his own eyes how much despair and helplessness was present on those disciples when they choose to give up and leave. Now only Chen Xiang was left to begin the test. Body could understand why Elder Dan would be so biased towards Chen Xiang. Although how Chen Xiang handled the matter was rather surprising, they also believed that he had no other choice. Chen Xiang, it's your turn. You still have the option to give up. Otherwise you will definitely suffer excruciating pain and might also ruin your future cultivation. Elder Dan sounded extremely cold. It was very difficult for anyone to understand why she hated Chen Xiang so much. After all, Chen Xiang was just a minor character. Why would a famous person from the Qinwu mainland hate him? Chen Xiang himself didn't know how he offended this mysterious Elder Dan. I'm not going to give up. Chen Xiang's voice was firm and powerful, spreading out in all directions. At the same time, every genius thought, Chen Xiang had also been subjected to the exact same pressure they had been, yet he is still upright, standing with a straight back. They simply could not compare with this kind of strength. There were still many disciples in the square who hadn't left. There were also true martial realm experts. These were the inner sect disciples. The outer sect disciples who had just failed the assessment also wanted to see how Elder Dan was going to treat Chen Xiang. Then, let's begin. Elder Dan replied in a low voice. After her statement ended, everyone felt a burst of scorching qi waves surge in the square. What made everyone startled the most was how those thick and strong giant bricks in the square began to resemble the sea and started heaving up and down. It was immediately followed by a severe tremor. It was as if the whole extreme martial sect was shaking. Those thick bricks in the square transformed into powder from that giant tremor. The next scene made everyone suck in a deep cold breath. These special bricks were actually turned into powder in the blink of an eye. What was totally unexpected was that below those bricks, there was another layer of metal-like material that looked far more dysprosium. An old man picked up a brick and threw it into the square. In the blink of an eye, that brick was transformed into powder. This kind of pressure was far stronger compared to what Yun Xiaodao underwent, and in addition to that, it was also extremely hot. If you can arrive behind my back, then you have pass, said this assessment. Elder Dan hadn't taken a single step, but instead transformed the entire square into a sea of lava in the blink of an eye. Chen Xiang was sweating more and more. He could feel that the current pressure was at least several times stronger compared with the previous one, and was far more terrifying. Everyone was holding their breath as they looked at Chen Xiang. His body was burnt by the flames. His robes were not able to withstand the scorching true qi released by Elder Dan. In the blink of an eye, they were instantly burnt into ashes. But for Chen Xiang, this did not matter. To the crowd's surprise, he was able to withstand such high temperatures. Furthermore, he also released flames that Hi+L'd his body. Chen Xiang's fine strong muscles were now burning red. Although the pressure had increased, his back still remained tall and straight. His eyes were still clear as he stared straight at the burning pupils of the faraway Elder Dan. Chen Xiang took a step as his whole body fiercely shook. The metal floor he stepped upon was very hot, but due to him cultivating the vermilion bird divine exercise, he was able to withstand this type of scorching heat. Seeing Chen Xiang begin to walk, everyone watching was deeply moved. Even under such a scenario, Chen Xiang was still able to move. It must be known that even the inner sect disciples watching were afraid to try it. Plus, Chen Xiang was just an outer sect disciple, and was also only at the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Chen Xiang walked very slowly because each step was extremely difficult to take. He had to spend nearly all of his true qi to support his body. This was the universal true qi. Even so, it was still extremely difficult for him. Half an hour passed as each and every step from Chen Xiang was clearly seen by everyone. Although in reality it was just a short distance, for Chen Xiang it seemed as if he had been walking for more than 100 years. Humph! The elder Dan coldly snorted as Chen Xiang spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone could see that elder Dan had increased the pressure. This was very unfair, but although everyone had this thought in their mind, they did not voice it out loud. They knew that Chen Xiang could not walk until the end, however they still admired Chen Xiang. This was because although he clearly knew the road would be nearly impossible, he still did not give up. Clenching his teeth, he once again began to move forward. Time flowed slowly, each step from Chen Xiang shook everyone's soul. Each time Chen Xiang took a step, the crowd expected him to fall right after. Yet Chen Xiang defied their expectations each and every time, refusing to fall. He took one step after another, each time spitting out a mouthful of blood. As the blood fell on the metal tiles beneath him, it instantly evaporated into thin air. I said that you must stay in the outer sect to temper yourself. You must be obedient and abide, stay there. I will not let you pass. Through the second assessment. To everyone's surprise, Elder Dan's voice was trembling. Apparently, she was very angry and also didn't expect Chen Xiang to be capable of arriving in front of her. Immediately after her voice was transmitted, Chen Xiang emitted a horrible shriek as both of his knees touched the ground. Elder Dan was determined to not allow Chen Xiang to pass as she once again increased the level of pressure. Although I do not know why you're doing this to me, I will never give in to you. I will definitely pass through this second assessment. Chen Xiang suddenly let out a low laugh and spoke in a low tone. The square was dead silent and everyone could hear his declaration very clearly. After Chen Xiang vomited a large amount of blood, he once again stood up to everyone's surprise, only to see him then shout loudly, "I can die, but I will never bow to you." Chapter 85 Suicidal. Chapter 85 Suicidal, never going to surrender. This was what Chen Xiang kept telling himself in his heart, and Bai Yuyu and Su Meiyao also didn't say anything, and they seemed to be acquiesce with Chen Xiang doing this dangerous thing. At the same time they were also deeply shocked by this indomitable spirit of Chen Xiang's. Humph, human are like ants. Elder Dan's voice was as if she was clenching her teeth, and it sounded like she was now angry. Chen Xiang just walked no more than a few steps. He once again fell down, this time he was lying on the ground, from his whole body blood was plussing out. Did you not also came from an ant? Someday this ant will definitely transcend you. Chen Xiang clenched his and said. Although he sounded very weak, but anyone listening could sense it was full of pride. Chen Xiang could not stand up, but he was still crawling bit by bit. Elder brother Chen. Yun Xiaodao looked at Chen Xiang, his eyes were moist, and he then remembered just because it was too difficult to bear he gave up, but Chen Xiang wanted to pass through this second assessment, so he was now fighting with his life. He just does not want to bow to this strong woman, even if he was an ant. Elder brother Chen, you'll definitely be able to come, hold on. Yun Xiaodao originally believed Chen Xiang didn't stand a chance, but he hadn't expected Chen Xiang could persist and arrive here, so he could not help himself and shouted. Chen Xiang, enter the inner sect with us together. If this old man had this kind of perseverance, then I would not still be staying in the outer sect for so long. Zhang De was also infected by Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang, hold on. You can do it. One man in the square loudly shouted. Looking at Chen Xiang slowly crawling bit by bit on that scorching ground, and watching the blood evaporate from his body, everyone was deeply shocked. Chen Xiang! Chen Xiang! Chen Xiang! In the square hundreds of people shouted in unison, their sound resounded through the sky, and in the middle of the night the extreme martial sect was shrouded with these blood-seething sounds. Listening to everyone's high-pitched voices, Chen Xiang's blood began to boil. He operated the few remaining true qi, and struggled to crawl forward. His body was devastated and numb due to various kinds of pain, and now all of his perseverance was supporting him to crawl. Elder Dan's tender body was trembling, as she did not expect that so many people would support Chen Xiang in front of her, which was simply contradicting her. Do not struggle, ants will be ants. Elder Dan's voice was full of rage, because Chen Xiang was only 2 steps away from her. Chen Xiang suddenly let out a horrible shriek, only to see blood suddenly bursting out from both of his legs and arms. Apparently Elder Dan has intentionally once again enhanced the pressure. This was simply avenging personal enmity using public affairs, but Elder Dan was the number 2 character in the extreme martial sect. No one would dare to contradict her. This time I'll see how you will walk. Elder Dan let loose a deep breath, and not only the firm and resolute expression in Chen Xiang's eyes were making her unhappy, but Chen Xiang to her surprise had also not give up. Ha ha ha! Chen Xiang to everyone's surprise loudly laughed. He was only 2 steps away. That was not only the gateway to third assessment, but also the outcome between him and Elder Dan. Although he was far inferior to Elder Dan, but here he must definitely win against Elder Dan. This father will never surrender to you. Chen Xiang loudly laughed, and suddenly he let out a loud shout, only to see flames suddenly gush plussing out from his back, while a pair of giant wings appeared on his back. Those wings swiftly flapped, scorching fire waves one after another started plussing out, and Chen Xiang's body started to rise. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. However, in that small instant, Chen Xiang's battered body was already behind Elder Dan. Elder Dan was shocked, and so was everyone else. Chen Xiang actually had a true Qi Wing type martial skill, which was a very precious and rare martial skill. In the most crucial moment, it let Chen Xiang leap the last 2 steps, making him pass through the second assessment. Ha ha ha! This father is through the second assessment, ha 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 ha! There was not a little bit of strength left in Chen Xiang's whole body, and he was lying on the ground, looking at the moon in the sky, while letting out a crazy laugh one after another. Everyone in the square was speechless and listening to Chen Xiang's maniac laughter. Not only in their hearts were they shocked, but at the same time they were also excited, envied him, and admired him. Do not laugh, there is still the third assessment. Yun Xiaodao wiped the tears in his eyes and stuffed a bunch of dawn into his mouth, and Chen Xiang, in an instant, could distinguish that these were all low-grade spirit-level Dan. There was a bunch of true Qi dawn for recovering his true Qi, 9 recovering dawn which were quickly healing his internal injuries. This moved Chen Xiang's heart. This is the white jade Dan, take it and use it. Zhu Rong came and threw him a jade box. Middle-grade spirit-level white jade Dan, this was a very precious healing Dan, and the stingy Zhu Rong was actually willing to give him. Chen Xiang and Yun Xiaodao were looking at him with an incredible expression in their eyes. Do not thank me, Zhu Rong proudly said. Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De also quickly smeared the herbal powder in the jade box on Chen Xiang's body. This herbal powder was similar to white jade, crystal clear and very beautiful. Elder Dan, disciple with great courage, asks you, why must you be dead set against me? Do you like to avenge personal vendettas using public means? It was impossible not to have anger in Chen Xiang's heart. Just a moment ago he was kind of presumptuous in front of Elder Dan, and was also fearless. I made it very clear, you are young and fit, I just want you to sharpen yourself in the outer sect. Elder Dan actually had not been angry, but at this moment, she was unable to say anything again. Avenge personal enmity using public means? So what if I am? I have the strength, so I can do whatever I want. Also, the extreme martial sect cannot bind me, those rules are only established for you. Elder Dan said with disdain, You want justice? Strength is justice, and as long as I want, I can kill you now. No one will say anything to me, and also no one will take revenge for you. Indeed, you can do this, but some things aren't absolute, just like how I was able to pass through the second assessment and you weren't able to stop me. Qin Xiang said while sneering, but someday I'll get back to you. You better kill me now. Zhang De and Yun Xiaodao were smearing medicine on Qin Xiang, but their hands could not help but tremble. They totally had not expected Qin Xiang would actually dare to talk back to number 2 character of the extreme martial sect. Elder Dan burst into laughter, but her laughter was very stiff, and not very natural, making everyone who heard a little confused. Good. I'd like to see up to what extent you'll grow. I promise you, as long as one day you can beat me, you can do whatever you want to punish me, if you want to marry me you also can. Elder Dan spoke loudly, once again making people dazed. Qin Xiang was also very much surprised, however he teasingly said, I'll not bother to marry you, your face is always covered in a mask, maybe it is disfigured, at that time I'll suffer. Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De very much wanted to sew Qin Xiang's mouth together. One after another he was actually speaking these kind of words as if he didn't want to live, and Zhu Rong also went far away, fearing Elder Dan will suddenly explode and if he would also be affected. You do not want to live? Elder Dan's voice was extremely cold. If I wanted to live, I would have already fled before. Look at me. Does it look like the type of person who wants to live? Qin Xiang replied like he did not want to live. Do you think I cannot kill you? Elder Dan stepped forward, and purple flames gushed out from her slender and beautiful hands. Seeing the purple flame, Qin Xiang in his heart was greatly startled. He heard Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu speaking, and only those who possess a fire spirit could release purple flames. Come on then. So that after this I won't not have to marry you, an ugly girl, and you also will not have to marry this boy wet behind the ears after this. Qin Xiang could not finish his sentence. His mouth was covered by Yun Xiaodao. Elder Dan received the flames in her hand and said coldly, What I said before, I'll certainly keep my promise, as long as you beat me, I'll marry you, and at that time I'll be at your disposal. And my appearance does not have much of difference with your fiancé Xue Xianxian. Elder Dan finished speaking, flew and left. Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De were stunned, while Zhu Rong immediately rushed over, both of his hands grabbing Qin Xiang's shoulder, and with a look of disbelief he asked, Xue Xianxian was really your fiancé?